Live. Hey guys, what is up? I'm Cole, and that's Jay. This is the movie discussion pocket dimension where time does not exist, and the only thing that matters is film. We are back this week with a film from Japan in the 70s, felt somewhat classic revenge story, Lady Snowblood from 1973, directed by Toshiya Fujita, starring Meiko Kaji as the titular hero, or anti-hero, as you say. So, if anybody's seen Kill Bill, which is my favorite Tarantino movie, Kill Bill is more or less just sort of his own kind of reimagining of that movie. It's the same sort of plot, it's just with different characters and settings, and it uses a lot of this take as Tarantino does with his homage or whatever. He really hits you over the head with the stuff that he lifts kind of verbatim from this movie, although I know it's all to show his respect and love for it, which is true. I mean, I'd heard of the movie before I saw Kill Bill, but I didn't actually see it until probably a couple of years after I saw Kill Bill. I sought it out, and it's, always been close, near and dear to my heart ever since, so that's about probably 2005, 2006, something like that. Like most awesome things in this world, Lady Snowblood was originally a comic book. It was a manga of the same name, created by two men named Kazuo, the writer Kazuo Koike, and the artist Kazuo Kimimura, which came out in the early 70s and is in English now. Dark Horse Comics did a translated version about a little more than 10 years ago, which I've read, I think, the first half of. I can't remember exactly how the volumes go. The movie follows the manga fairly closely, but the ending is a big difference, and there's a lot of stuff they have to leave out. Some of it just, for plot and pacing, and some of it I think was probably because of content. Actually, for people who don't know the manga, a big point in the manga is there's a lot of lesbian sex, and there's none of that in the movie, unfortunately.
Yeah, you said there's a translated version of this?
Yeah, Dark Horse released a few volumes I'm seeing between 2005 and 2008.
Cool.
And I read a few of them. Okay, there's 4 volumes. Maybe I only read the first of the 4, something like that. I can't remember. But, yeah, so basically the events of the movies more or less take place in the manga too, but the manga also has, like I said, some of that and subplots. Plus, it also has some extra killings that she does, just like contract killings. The movie actually opens with one of those. So, even people who haven't seen the movie or even really heard of it probably have seen or read something that has been inspired by it. She's one of the more celebrated and stylistic femme fatales of pop culture of the screen, and her pristine white kimono that she wears, spattered with bright red blood, is one of the more iconic sort of like costumes in movie history.
Is this like one of the films that really put arterial blood spray like into cinema? Or
well, it had been around in Japan for at least a few years before that. In some of those, what they're known as like the heroic bloodshed movies. Mm-hmm. I think One-Armed Swordsman, there's a couple of those movies that have that. And those started in the late 60s, so it had been around. Even though it's very violent and graphic, obviously, I'd say this movie is a little different in that while those movies had just as much violence, they were kind of even less serious in tone, some of them. Like, this is more of a darker in tone type thing. Mm. Not that it was the first. There were certainly movies that had, assassins and things like that. But in this, the assassin is the main character. But yeah, it was an interesting time for cinema as far as that goes. I guess the arterial blood spray really did originate with those movies in Japan, but we'd see other foreign movies that would use it too. In the 70s especially, you just think of that blood. It's not realistic looking at all. It's a very bright paint-looking blood spurting out of people. If you watch a lot of those Italian giallos, they would have the same sort of stuff in it, right? And that found its way into some of mainstream cinema, but toned down to a certain extent. But still, you can think of 70s movies that had sort of that bright red blood in it. But yeah, the idea, I don't know who came up with the idea of like it's spurting out. This idea that we as human beings, we're just so full of blood that if I took like a pin and pricked myself here, it'd be like,
There was one part where she stabs a guy like in the chest and it's like it explodes onto her and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Like
this is really the start of movies where violence was really becoming stylized into something that would look, cool, and it's so over the top in a way that you wouldn't even necessarily think of it as brutal. There's almost sort of an interesting beauty to it. Especially those sprays when they hit the wall. I think of this is a bit later, but one of the giallos that I own that Dario Argento did. Which one is it? It's from the early '80s. Tenebrae. There's like a kill towards the end of Tenebrae where like a woman have to like getting cut across here. She like turns, she goes oh like that, and it just sprays like this spray of blood across the wall. She falls down, and it's kind of beautiful, really. So yeah, so definitely a trope that we've seen that has died out in later years. It's funny because the '80s is what we think of as more over the top violence when it comes to most things, but I guess done in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it would have been jarring for like a North American audience or whatever to see a movie this violent, because really the movies that were this violent, there were a couple emerging. We talked about this in our New Hollywood series, where one of the things that was added was a more graphic, brutal violence, but it came a lot slower over here than it did overseas in European countries and Asian countries. So I think probably if you had been like somehow able to see a movie like this in the early 70s, I don't know if there's much you could have seen that was comparable to it, because even if you watch something like that was more brutal and violent in the 70s, like Death Wish, it's just people like getting shot and falling down.
Right.
I mean, it's death, but it's not. It's more clean, I guess. But as we said, this is so over the top that it's not really gory in like a way. It's almost kind of like artistic and pretty. It's interesting. And of the movies that does that, these are my favorite. Well, I say these because there's a second. This movie is so successful, they made a second one a year later. And the movies are. Sorry, go ahead.
You've seen the sequel?
Yeah.
Is it good?
Yeah, I mean, it's not quite as good as the original, but it still has some material from the manga it can draw on, so it's not like they're just making stuff up. They do have some things in there, so it's not bad. Honestly, I'm surprised they stopped at 2.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it's for the best, because when some of these things get drawn out, the quality drops, etc. So maybe it is good that they just did 2 pretty good quality movies and moved on. The actress... what's her name? Oh, yeah, Meiko Kaji. She's been in like over 100 films in her career, and yet this is still the role she's best known for. And I would say it is really good casting, because we have like this female assassin driven by revenge and vengeance and stuff, etc. She's got a really intense look on her face. And also, I think because, I don't know if it's just how she always looks or what, but her face is almost... It's not as kind of robust as a lot of Japanese faces I've seen. I know I'm sounding weird and probably racist in a way. I don't mean that. What I mean is she almost starts to like a sunken, unhealthy look to her that makes her eyes look bigger. Yeah. Because you can really notice that in the movie, because there's a lot of, close-up shots of her looking really intense and staring. And it's done really well. So, I mean, she she's not just goofing around, or... She's going right into this role, taking it very seriously, which is nice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, she has a very unique look to her. I know early on when she goes to that village, and it's obviously a poor village. All the people are dirty, and then it contrasts to her and her white, pristine, and,
right?
And they're all have dirt on their face, and her face is white, much lighter than theirs. A really cool contrast there.
Yeah. Just again, kind of like the Argento movies of the 70s. Like this movie's colors, the colors really pop. Yeah. Really nice colors, and as you said, the contrast of her pristine, bright white against these sort of drab backgrounds. Although there's some nicer backgrounds later on too, and of course the snowfall, the snow falling down, which again Tarantino would use to great effect in Kill Bill Volume 1.
Blood on Snow has a great look to it. I love it.
Yeah, there's some really good movies that use that pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
And like this movie even like references and talks about it. It's like it's in the song. Something is like I'm paraphrasing, but it's like snow that's been like sullied by blood. Can it be washed away with pure white snow? It's very that's the other difference. Like you could lump this in the 70s, as we said, it was the era of exploitation type films and you could say this is kind of because of its over-the-top violence and it's true. Like it's a fairly straightforward revenge story. It's not going for great characterization, but still, there's something. It's a very poetic and stylistic movie. It's broken down into 4 chapters, each chapter having a title. Another thing that Kill Bill would use. And there's a few sort of philosophical moments, and of course, it has a narrator who doesn't just narrate, but every once in a while, waxes sort of poetical on a few things. So the movie has a really artistic side to it. So it's not just like some splatterhouse revenge film. I mean, it is, but it has that other side to it too, which is another thing that makes it interesting and stand out from others, revenge style movies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it could be, one, a little bit more one direction. It could be cheesy, but it's not at all.
No, it really isn't. And it's aged really well too. Like if it is a snapshot of the era, but it's kind of a snapshot of all sort of like the cool things of the era, right? Because sometimes whenever we see movies from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and some of it we're happy about, and some of it we kind of laugh at or wince at. It's like, oh yeah, that was so 90s and stuff like that. Like this movie is like really good at I mean, it's a 70s movie, but it's a period piece. It's set towards the end of the 19th century.
Yeah, I saw the Criterion transfer, and it looks amazing. Like it, I mean, you could have told me this was filmed 10 years ago. It looks, Criterion always does a great job with their stuff.
Yeah. I mean, I only just taped it off TCM, but even that, like whatever they were showing, looks really good. So I'm definitely going to hold on to it for a while before I someday buy it. Because this has a couple good Blu-ray releases. First by Arrow, and then by Criterion, and both include both movies together, which would be something really cool to have. But yeah, her name is actually, it would have been Shiriaki Hime, which is kind of a pun on Snow White's Japanese name, which would be Shiriaki Hime, which would be Princess Snow White. So that's some of the reasoning behind the name there. The inspiration coming by her mother seeing the snow coming down as she's dying and giving birth to her. But her normal name is Oyuki, or sometimes just called Yuki.
So Shirayuki, I know Yuki is snow, right?
Yeah, the character for it would be Snow, I guess. Yeah.
And then what's the Shara part or Shara?
Yeah, I don't know. Hold on.
And then Hime must be blood.
Shirayuki, the full thing would be like princess.
Okay, so that's the lady Snowblood.
Yeah, so yeah, they changed the princess to like lady.
Gotcha.
Speaking of lady, I was looking for a comic that I can't find because I was going to say, speaking of which, talking about inspiring various fiction, there's a Daredevil character called Lady Bullseye who's directly influenced by this character. So sometime around 2010, 2011, they introduced, it seems like a derivative, it's like, it's another one of those, here's a female version of an established character, because Bullseye's been around forever, but they did make her fairly distinct and different, and what's kind of cool is she's more based on Lady Snowblood than she is on Bullseye, and she actually is a Japanese character, too, and as part of her costume, she has, like, white makeup, making her face very white, but her origin is kind of like she was, I don't know, she was kidnapped by criminals in Japan at some point, and then she was became Yakuza property. And while she was with a whole bunch of other women that were going to be sold into sexual slavery, and she was abused and stuff. And anyway, at some point, before they were going to be sold to whomever, Bullseye showed up and slaughtered the Yakuza, not to free her or anything. It was just some job and some other job, and she was absolutely enchanted and entranced by the way he effortlessly cut them down, and then she decided to dedicate her life to be like him. And then she eventually, of course, comes into contact with Daredevil and becomes a member of the Hand, blah, blah, blah. She's a pretty cool character. But yeah, so that's maybe why it's late, and that's obviously why it's Lady Bullseye, which is good. I mean, we're going to call her Bullsette. I don't know.
Oh.
All right, but a pretty cool character. But I have at least one comic she's in, but I couldn't find it. But anybody can do an image search and get a look of her. But a little better than just a a derivative. Here's a female version of an established character. They do some things to make her stand out, but in that they're based on an already existing female character, Lady Snowblood. But still pretty cool. I like it. But yeah, and also not like Tarantino got this from it too, but I mean, Tarantino likes to tell stories out of sequence, and this movie does that too. And that the movie starts with Yuki's birth, but then it goes to the present day, and then there's various flashbacks going back to other things that her mother went through and her own training. And I have to think of, when we think of badass characters that got like trained when they were young in movies, I'm trying to think of like a movie older than this that has that. I'm not saying it's the first, because it's definitely not, but it might be the oldest movie I know that has
such a trope now.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's such a trope that, some old master trains somebody, often from when they're a kid, and it's sort of brutal, but it was, I'm not saying it was brand new back then, but it certainly wasn't all worn out like it is now. And it's one of the better ones.
73, so I mean that was like all over the 80s, the 80s martial arts kung fu movies.
Oh, sure, yeah.
I can't think of one. I'm sure it exists, but I can't think of one.
There's probably a couple, but yeah, this might be the oldest one I'm aware of. And again, in Kill Bill Volume 2, there's some stuff there too, but that overlaps with the Chinese kung fu movies, where a lot of, even though she'd already been trained in like the Japanese arts and katana and stuff, that focuses on her kung fu training under Pai Mei, and at least she's an adult for it, is the difference. Because here, and again, this isn't the first time, but it's got to be one of the first times. And as we said, now it's all over the place, where you've got like a young kid being trained in a way that's so serious and brutal that it's basically child abuse.
Right.
And that's the whole point of her character, though. She was born into the world only to be a vessel for vengeance, which is pretty cool and interesting.
Yeah, some of that training was kind of disturbing, but
I like him throwing her in a barrel and throwing her down a hill. I was like, what does this even teach her?
That was one part where he was just like trying to cut her with a sword, and she was completely nude.
Yeah, she throws her clothes off.
Yeah. Which, one of the many things that probably wouldn't play well, modern day in a film. But really unique, that it's a female assassin. You didn't see that much back then as well.
Yeah.
Just the whole origin, I think, is really interesting.
Yeah, as we said, I like just like how far they take it, right? So we've seen characters where maybe their parents get killed and they swear revenge, but in this, like, it's not even her idea.
Yeah.
Her mother dies giving birth to her, but she makes sure, like, and the only reason her mother even had her was for that, because her father was not actually her father, right? Is the thing. Like, she would think of them as her parents, but the fact is, so we go back 20 years ago, at the start of the what's that period called? Meiji, whatever period. Basically, the period where Japan, after a few years of the Tokugawa government, where Japan had been sort of closed off to the world. In the second half of the 19th century, this is where it was finally opening itself up again to the world, because it couldn't, continue a policy of isolation as the world became more and more connected. And one of the things was seeing the might of countries in Europe and America. Japan realized that it wanted to. This is the beginning of what will sow the seeds what will become Imperial Japan. A very militaristic and strong nation. But this is before all that, when they're trying to sort of whip themselves into shape. And this is true. They did have like an edict going for like a draft of getting all boys and men of a certain age to do military service, etc. And it is true there were a lot of people that lived, especially in poorer places, that wanted to avoid this as much as they could. And there were criminals that would try to take advantage of it, and that's where this comes from. So we have some criminals that were running this sort of scam, telling people, oh, there's actually a way where you can get your family member or yourself exempt from the service if you buy your way out of it, if you pay like a certain amount of money. So they were going around scamming people out of their money. And that's where this comes from. And also, I didn't read about this historically, but it's probably true. The thing they said in the movie, how there was like, what was it? There was rumors of how the conscription agents were these men wearing white that would come around. So her family before she's born is her mother and father and what would have been her brother, who's barely mentioned her at all in the movie. You think that his death would matter, but it's barely a footnote. But they're out in the new place. They've moved to a new place because he's going to be an elementary school teacher there, and they're walking along their sort of well-to-do family and then suddenly they get accosted by these criminals saying he's wearing white. He's one of the conscription agents, and they don't think that at all, but they hack him to death anyway, right in front of tons of witnesses, and it's really lets you know right off what the movie's going to be like because of how bloody and violent it is. They keep stabbing him and hacking him as the blood is spurting out of him like a fountain. I love his last words too. He says "This is an outrage. Why?" I'm thinking there's nothing wrong with that exactly, but saying it out loud seems kind of weird. I understand that it is an outrage, but this is you're dying. I don't know. I just think it's funny. It might be a lost in translation type thing. But it just seems sort of weird. He's been hacked to pieces, and he's like, "This is an outrage." I mean, yes, obviously it is. You've been murdered for no reason in the middle of the day in front of tons of people. But I don't know. I just find it an odd line. And he just goes, "Oh," and he falls down. And then what follows is even worse. So when we get, and the thing is, for the next 3 days, his mother is taken away by the gang, and they beat her and rape her. But also, just before we get into that, when they've taken her to some house by a river, we do get a quick shot that there's blood in the river, and we get one shot seeing that they killed the kid, and the kid's just lying dead by the river. But then he really never gets mentioned again, which is kind of unfortunate because it is a kid getting murdered, which you could say is even worse than 2 adults. But anyway, so then, so the main criminals, there's 4 of them, 3 men and a woman, and one of them decides to take her for himself to I guess be his sex slave, and he takes her to the city. But he lets his guard down around her, and she murders him during coitus, which is another thing that is kind of in Kill Bill in the animated section. And remember the animated section for the origin of Orenishi? It's the same thing, except when Orenishi, she was a kid, and this what it was. It was some Yakuza boss was a pedophile, and he was going to take her to bed, and then she stabs him and kills him. And she even says something that and then Oni Orenishi, I mean, in Kill Bill, she says something that I think was lifted from the movie too, because she says what does she say? She says "look at my face" or something like that. It's been a while since I've seen it, but remember she's twisting the knife or blade in him, and she's talking to him very calmly. At one point, she says something "take a good look at my face," and she's trying to remind him of the parents he killed. The same thing in this movie, where when she kills the first guy, the drunk Kimimura or whatever his name was, down by the water, she says the same thing, "Look at my face. Doesn't it resemble a woman that you tortured and killed," or something like that. So I like to think that probably that's where it's too much of a coincidence to think that that's where he got it from. But anyway, so then she's immediately arrested. This is the mother, Sayo, for killing him, which makes sense in a way. You think, of course, she didn't try to hide it. She just kills him in his house. She'd be immediately arrested. Except then you think, except that her daughter just goes around killing people without any problem at all. She just kills people in public all the time and walks away from it. The cops never arrest her. But anyway, for the sake of plot, we'll say maybe because it was maybe a more populated area. And then her mother goes to prison for the crime. And then she just becomes obsessed with the idea of revenge and knows that she can't get out of prison. So her idea is she has to have a kid. Her husband's dead. So now she just starts seducing every man she can find around her, whether it's prison guards or the prison priest and everything. And it's really fun. She says, all the other female inmates hated me and didn't understand what I was doing. She's thought it was about lust, but all she wanted was to get impregnated. And she eventually does. And we have, there's no way of knowing who the father was. And that was her whole plan, to have a kid. What's interesting is she has a daughter, but she never says anything how she's a little bit disappointed or anything. I guess she's pretty progressive because she thinks a girl will be just as good as a boy for revenge, and that's how the movie works, which is cool. And something that set it apart for the time, right? As we said, nowadays, a female assassin badass is all too common. But
yeah. I mean, I think she wanted a strong son, but I guess you play the cards you're dealt, right?
Yeah.
It almost works better that way because it's more unexpected,
Oh, I think so. I'm sure that was part of the reason for when they first came up with the story for the manga, right?
Right.
This instrument of her revenge, but instead she's a girl and she's sort of delicate and beautiful looking. Mm-hmm. And as we said, that the femme fatale trope existed before that, but still, this is
Well, it's easier to get closer to her enemies that way when she's looks like this meek fragile thing, but she's really a badass bitch.
Right, and that's how the movie opens, right? When she kills the unrelated guy, one of the Yakuza bosses. It's pretty funny that though they do take her seriously pretty quickly though, because all she's doing is like standing in the road. It's a really great opening shot. She said that the snow is coming down, and she's there in her kimono with her. Did she have the fan at the time? Oh no, she has the umbrella.
The umbrella, yeah.
Yeah, and they demand she get out of his way, the cart. And she just doesn't move, and then they're like, "Kill her!" Like, they don't even know she's a threat. They're like, this bitch won't move. Cut her down." I mean, I get it. They're tough Yakuza, and they're used to shoving people around, but still, it's pretty impressive. Like, some woman's in front of them.
Well, that escalated quickly.
Yeah, it's like get out of the way. She's not getting out of the way. All right, kill her. And then, she very quickly. So, and her weapon, of course, is pretty cool. It's like a concealed blade within the umbrellas. It's the umbrella, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the umbrellas.
It's like paper umbrella, though. So it's...
Yeah.
It gets destroyed like every fight, doesn't it?
Pretty much. I guess she keeps getting new ones. And
yeah.
They should have shown a scene for like customizing it to fit her blade in.
Yeah. That's cool, though. I think that opening sequence might be my favorite in the whole film.
It's very iconic. Really, the snow coming down, and then moving along, and then this, pale, delicate flower of a woman in her bright white standing in the road, and the next moment she's deadly and cuts them down. But it's a hell of a blade, because I mean that's how these movies work, right? Because I mean, absurdly sharp weapons where it's really easy to like lop people's like limbs off. Jumping ahead to when she finally kills Anna, whatever her name is, the female of the group.
Mm-hmm.
Like she manages to cut her in half completely with like a one-handed swipe. Like one-handed, she just goes and cuts her in half.
It's not a full katana, right? It's smaller.
No, it's not. Yeah, that's the difference between like Kill Bill. I mean, Kill Bill, she's got a katana, and I mean, katana is like my favorite weapon of all time in real life and in fiction. But I mean, I don't mind that she's not using a katana because it's part of her thing, right? A concealed blade. But yeah, it's like a katana, but it's like a modified, shorter katana. There probably is a possible name for it.
In between I can't think of what the smaller one's called. They've got the katana and they've got the smaller one, smaller dagger. Same style, the Tonto style blade. It's like a custom sword. Right?
It's kind of like a hybrid.
Yeah, because it's almost thinner than a katana too. Like because so she can wield it, easier.
Yeah, and she fights off guys that have katanas.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, that's the point of her character, that she's extremely skilled. That's another thing that's really lucky for the mother, though, that like when I don't even know what the policy for a prison in Japan at that era would have been for a baby born in prison, but they managed to like get the kid out, which I don't think they would have kept her in prison. I don't know what it would have been, but obviously the authorities would have taken her, right? This is a kid whose mother died, so they would have like sent her to some sort of like foster care or probably orphanage, right? But they managed to smuggle her out, and it just turns out that like I can't even remember. This is the part that I kind of mix up. I can't remember if the mother knew the guy or if it was just the other woman that helped get the kid out that just happened to know this priest that was like a total badass swordsman that was totally willing to like train a kid from birth to be an instrument of revenge. It's like, well, that's handy. That's useful. But that's really what sets her apart, because we often have characters, even ones that are trained young, like this is from birth. And she's told the whole time, like, you're not even human. You're a demon in human form. You're an Asura, as they say. Yeah. And your only purpose on this earth is for revenge and bloody vengeance. So, yeah, talk about not having a childhood.
Yeah, and what we would come to, see the training montage, what we would grow up seeing in movies was quite brutal in this film, and not really a montage, but just a sequence of different types of training.
Yeah.
We would, I think of like Karate Kid, with like the background music and
Yeah.
It's like a quick, almost just like a side note. All right, now I'm a badass.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the '80s was really the heyday of the montage,
Yeah.
right?
I think of
Showing
like
with like some cool, with some cool music playing in the background.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is before that. So yeah, as we said, it's a few quicker scenes. It's quick scenes, but it's not like a montage, and it doesn't have like stupid music playing. Not stupid. I mean, it fit for those movies, but certainly wouldn't fit here, right? Again, the movie, despite being somewhat outlandish and over the top, still takes itself pretty seriously, which I like. It walks that line, but I think, as you said, it for all how over the top it can be and ridiculous in some ways, like it's never cheesy, which is something that makes it really, as we said, stand the test of time and stand out and remain a movie that people come back to. It's got 100% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, wherever that's worth.
Wow, that's really good.
Yeah. I mean, it's really hard to figure out how they do stuff on that site. Like, some of it is so unpredictable. Like, it's like, we love this, we hate this. We're, I don't know how it works. I never visit the site. I only just see it on like other things where the people mention like what the score is.
If you look at what's scored 100, you'd really be surprised. It's a lot of like mediocre things that have 100s on there.
I know. And that's what I mean, kind of takes away from the significance of this having 100, because it's like, well, that and lots of like crappy movies. We're not, as you said, mediocre. So, take it for what it's worth, I suppose. But yeah, the priest's name is, I'm just trying to look up some of the names here. Doke, or maybe Dokai. Well, yeah, I like the barrel training where he puts her in a barrel that makes her roll down a hill, and as the training progresses, because at first it's just stay in the barrel, don't get thrown out of it. But towards the end, like I guess when she's getting good at it, the whole thing is once it gets to the bottom, he's waiting at the bottom with a katana to like cut it in half, and she has to be able to like leap out just before he does that. I guess. I mean, it's an interesting kind of training, but I guess it's for reflexes. I don't know.
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, she pulls off some stuff that's fairly unrealistic, but I mean, that's part of the charm of the movie. She also has like sort of some interesting leaps that almost look like she floats, that are kind of cool. I do that a lot in a lot of Chinese movies. Actually, it's something I don't like about a lot of those Chinese kung fu movies, like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Like, I don't really like that movie because I don't particularly go for that style. I mean, I like it okay.
Yeah, I liked it at the time. It's as years have gone on, I don't like it quite as much. But
I've never understood why that, of all like the Chinese movies from before or even like around that era, was the big breakthrough like with Western audiences. I have no idea why.
I'm glad it was, though. It's like we say with a lot of these foreign films. People like Tarantino, championed all this stuff and brought a lot of it over here to where
Right.
we would have had an opportunity to watch it otherwise. So I am happy for that.
Yeah, I mean, as much as I can criticize the guy and stuff like that, I mean, I wouldn't have found Sonny Chiba until much later in my life without Tarantino's input on that, which is pretty cool. This is around the same time that Sonny Chiba was a star doing the Street Fighter movies. Might have been in the same year.
It's funny to think that Tarantino kind of worked for Weinstein, who they were the guys known for taking foreign films and just chopping the shit out of them.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
He is a guy that really respects that. So it's kind of odd to think that they were that closely related, because he's pretty much, they're like, all right, Quentin, whatever you want to do, you got total free reign.
Yeah, I can't find the name of the song, because the same song, like it's like the title, maybe it's called like Snowblood for all I know, because it's played at the start and beginning. Like, it's a bit much that even that is in Kill Bill. I was like, come up with your own song. Anyway.
Yeah, Shara Nohana.
Is that the name of the song?
The song, I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he actually uses her singing that song in Kill Bill, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's Tarantino for you. Love him or hate him.
Yeah, okay. It's called The Flower of Carnage. But yeah, that's right. The actress Meiko Kaji is the one who sings it, which I'd forgotten. But yeah, it's called The Flower of Carnage.
That's a cool translation.
Yeah. Also, I should have written down the chapter names because they have good names too. Like the first one, I know chapter 1 is just called Vow of Revenge, but after that they get more interesting. Like the second chapter mentions the Bamboo Brides, which is what the daughter of one of the targets she's after makes. And the movie's just soaked in tragedy too, right? Like she has this horrible, tragic backstory, but all of these other characters have fairly tragic lives themselves. So Nakamura, who's the first one she goes after, you know, yeah, he's a bad guy who did that stuff, but he's fallen on pretty hard times. He's just like a drunk and a gambler, and he's supported by his daughter, who lies to him and tells him like she makes money by selling this bamboo stuff that she makes, when really she makes it as a prostitute for a local gang boss. And of course, she becomes important later on in the movie. Let's get our names straight here. So let's see. Her mother is Sayo. So the 4 she was after were Gishiro, that's the guy at the end. Okono, that's the woman. Bonzo, who I usually just call Takamura. So yeah, so that's the others.
Bonzo's the drunk, right?
Yeah, Bonzo's the drunk with the daughter. Gishiro's the end guy, and Okono's the woman.
It's such bullshit when they pull the guns out, man. I hate that. It's like sword versus gun.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it would leave you questioning. You know, it's towards the end of the 19th century, guns do exist, even though they're rare in Japan. People still had them. So yeah, I don't know. It provides her with another challenge to overcome, I suppose. She does get shot.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Bizdell's watching. Thanks. I don't know. It's becoming very unmanageable, which is why I keep knocking out of my eyes. The whole thing is just me doing this. But thank you very much. I was talking to Bizdell not too long ago about how we miss when he had the long hair a few years ago. Remember, longer than this, he had hair.
That hair was awesome.
Yeah.
I'm jealous.
Well, right now he could get started on it because none of us can get haircuts.
No.
So
that's not an essential business, right? So.
Right. So we're all on the path. Plus, it's on the. Yeah, because I saw the other day one of those like crazy guys that like one of those people that thinks like living in America just means doing the opposite of whatever the government tells you to do, and that makes you like a freedom fighter. He was like live streaming like going to like a secret location to meet his barber so he could get a haircut. Like, what a fucking idiot. Because he thinks, this makes me a real hero and patriot. Stupid government telling us what to do.
Man, on my way to work today, I've never seen this many people out like riding bikes and walking and stuff. And I don't know, is that legal? I don't know. But anyway, it seems like people are getting like cabin fever, So
I mean, I can understand it.
Got to get out of the house. They say like divorce rates have like tripled.
Yeah. Speaking of which, that was like first happened, of course, because this all started in China. So when you had a whole bunch of people in China that, whether they had it or not, were quarantined, right? Like tons of people just got quarantined in China because it was, that was where the outbreak was and everything was going crazy. And plus their government can just do whatever the hell they want to people. So when they were like locking people up and quarantining them, like once they finally released a whole bunch, there was a big wave of divorces there. Like people being quarantined together were like, I can't actually stand you, it turns out. Yeah, we said this early on. Like, there's certain couples that like they have like a certain routine, the way they live their lives, so that they're always apart at certain moments. But now they're being forced to being together. I remember seeing some weird stuff about it on Twitter, like somebody saying like finding out like seeing her husband work from home was like so different because she'd never like actually seen him work before, which I can relate to. Like I said, like my father has been a lawyer my whole life, and it's a pretty serious job, but I can't reconcile that with the man I know, because to me, my father's a ridiculous person, and yet he somehow does this really serious job, which I could never really see. I saw him at work like once in my life. When I was in grade 11, I actually was in a law class in high school. It was a pretty good class, and one day we did go down to the courts when my father was there, and I got to see my father in court. And it consisted of the judge muttering something, my dad looking at some papers, muttering something back to the judge, and the judge going, okay, 4 weeks or something like that. It was really exciting.
Yeah. Well, these people, you need time apart as well as time together. Can't spend 24 hours around the same person, around any person.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna drive each other crazy. But.
Yeah. There are things I enjoy about this situation that I will miss when it's over. Like, for the first time, people have to respect my private space. Because, I don't know. I don't live in a huge city or a crowded place, but people in general just get too close to me at times, and it drives me insane. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You're on a crowded bus, fine. But, I mean, sometimes there's just no fucking reason for people to be that close to you. Like I like that now when I'm at the grocery store and I'm just, and I'm staring at the choices in front of me in the aisle trying to figure out what I want. Nobody's going to come up behind me and try to like reach around me. Like, fuck off. Like, you don't need to do that normal times, people. Just wait. I'm not going to stand there for 10 minutes. Just let me make my selection, move on. You don't have to get right up to next to me and reach around me and all this shit.
Well, if they get too close to you, just cough on them.
Yeah. It'll work. Yeah. I guess I wonder how long it'll work afterwards, because that's the thing. We're thinking of the after effects of this situation, right? I don't know. We're too old, but we have to think there's an entire generation of children. Some who are going to be too young. They're not going to remember it, but there's a whole bunch that will. And I have to wonder, ones of a certain age range, if this is going to like make a really sort of paranoid generation.
A bunch of germaphobes.
Yeah, a bunch of germaphobes and, just personal space and all this stuff. Because even once it's over, they're like, well, it could happen again.
I mean, hell, I say 3 feet anyway. They say 6 feet. I say 3 feet, like, anyway. I don't want anyone closer than 3 feet to me. But, I mean, have you ever heard of the sewer rat theory? That's where, they say like the more germs you're exposed to, the stronger your immune system becomes. So that's why they're saying all these people that grew up germaphobes, they're getting sick more because they weren't exposed to stuff that, if they had been, they would have, their immune system would have developed the antibodies to fight some of this stuff. So that's why you've got a bunch of people that just get sick all the time,
Yeah.
Because of, they sanitize their hands constantly and stuff.
I don't know. I haven't seen any direct data that directly supports that. It could be true, I guess, but it doesn't. It seems to go against things I've just personally experienced.
Well, it's like the peanut allergy. Like when we were kids. Did you ever know anybody allergic to peanuts?
Oh yeah,
you did.
Oh yeah,
really?
Yeah, I still remember his name. His name was Matthew Weatherby. Shout out to Matthew Weatherby. And
anyway,
so we couldn't bring peanuts and stuff to school.
Really? Wow. Anyway, it's become more of a thing because people or women didn't eat peanuts or peanut butter when they were pregnant. So when the kid's born, it's more likely to be allergic to peanuts.
I have no idea. I don't know why a woman wouldn't have peanut butter while pregnant. I mean, the whole thing about being pregnant is you eat all sorts of stuff, even stuff you wouldn't normally eat because you get cravings and stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to almost be consciously avoiding peanut butter, I think.
Yeah, I think they are because it was becoming more and more a thing, and they thought that would help, but it actually causes the opposite effect.
Huh.
No, there's like 10 kids that my kids go to school with that are allergic to peanuts, like deathly allergic. Like if they see a peanut, like they're going in that anaphylactic shock.
I mean, he was the one I knew well. There might have been 2 or 3 others over the course of the various schools I went to, but he's the one I remember. I went to elementary with him.
Which sucks because like a peanut butter jelly sandwich is like the best thing ever, so.
Yeah.
So they can't eat that for lunch.
Yeah. And peanut butter is such a good food at a time like this too. It has like a long shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
It's really easy to use.
Oh, it's healthy. It's cheap.
Yeah. I'm having trouble buying bread. Every time I go to buy bread, it's always like bread that's going to be like expire in like 2 days. I'm like, God.
Yeah, bread's a hard thing to come by around here.
I did shop today, and I think that chain Superstore has actually been doing a pretty good job on this, but this is one of the times where like I just got dinged on like everything I bought. Like under normal circumstances, I like 90% of the stuff I bought today was prices I would never pay.
Really?
Prices that I just walk away from. And yet now I'm not really in a position, like it's going to be a long weekend, right? Stuff's going to be closed. So I was like, fine, I'll pay it. So yeah, there was all sorts of stuff where I bought, there was nothing on sale today.
You think people are like price gouging?
I think certain stores are kind of taking advantage, because like one thing was like a few weeks ago when this was going, and my mother was telling me things that would be good to buy during this. She said how she was buying, various like those boxes of pasta, right? Just
Right.
simple pasta of Catelli's, whatever you put it in. And she's like, I got some today. It was like 94 cents. I went down and it was $3.49. The same stuff.
Oh,
like
man.
that's a huge difference. And that was something people were buying so much of that, like at my store that's right by me had like signs up doing like a limit per customer. You could only buy two. You could only buy 2 pastas and 2 pasta sauces. I was gonna say today was the first day in like 4 straight days that I finally ate meat. I realized like the last few days all I had was like pasta that didn't even have meat. I was eating like macaroni and stuff.
Yeah.
I did have a lasagna that had a tiny bit of meat in it, but it wasn't my normal big like meat lasagna that I normally get. It was a smaller one that I picked up at Walmart because it was cheap. So like for like 4 days straight, I didn't even have meat at all. So today I finally had something with meat. Nothing great, but something.
Yeah, I've been eating a lot of pastas too, unfortunately.
Yeah, I've gotten really sick of it.
Me too.
But I had garlic fingers yesterday because I actually did pick them up at the stupid place near me.
They do like a takeout type thing.
Yeah. You have to like ring the doorbell and then they'll let you in. And yeah.
And they spray you down with Lysol.
And as usual, every time I'm experiencing one of these things, I'm always there at the same time as people that are stupid. Because when I was there was 3 people together, which there's no fucking reason for it, coming. And I even knew a little extra about them because when I went in, the guy, I don't know if he was new or what, because I was actually thinking about paying in cash because I almost exhausted my cards because the whole thing was we're trying to, as much touchless paying, right? But I was like, no. But then he said something about, I kind of misunderstood him. He said something about the debit machine, and I was like, oh, of course he wants to pay debit, fine, that's fine. But then it turned out he didn't even actually know how to use it. So while he was trying to set it up, he was on the phone to somebody in the back or something trying to find out how to use it. And while he was talking to them, he mentioned the people that were waiting outside. He said, there's this family here, and they wouldn't order over the phone. I said, you can order over the phone, come pick it up. I ordered online, by the way. He said, but no, they wanted to do it in person. I'm thinking, they wanted to do it in person, and they wanted all 3 to come together. Like, fuck. If you live with 2 people, that's fine. You live with 2 people, but one of you go out and get the food. It's not rocket science, you idiots. I just gave them a weird look when I came out, because that's about as far as I'll go. But, I was super annoyed.
You shake your fist.
Mm-hmm. Even the garlic fingers, as much as I like them, don't have meat. So I'd gone like 4 straight days without any meat. I was like, I gotta eat something today. Get some meat in me. Something.
Man. Yeah, they're saying we were told this is supposed to be the worst week coming up, like right now, but now they're saying 2 weeks from now. So
Nova Scotia has had its first death actually back in Cape Breton.
Really? Wow.
Cape Breton has very few cases still compared to the rest of the province, which is, I think, a little over 300 now. But it's sort of like the worst scenario as far as that goes, like I said, because Cape Breton has an older population. If this had happened 20 years ago, it would have been really terrifying for my family because, like, both my mother's parents would have been in a rest home, a nursing home at this time, and a big part of my mother's life was going in to see them every day. So under those, she wouldn't be able to go see them, and also she'd be super worried about their health. I know in some places where it was really bad, like Spain, there were stories. I don't want to spread misinformation, but I think there's at least 1 or 2 stories that are true of like people finding out that like nursing homes were completely abandoned and the people in there were just left to die, and the staff just took off.
Oh, that's not good.
No, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, my father-in-law is in a rehab place right now, rehab home,
right.
nursing home, whatever.
He had something amputated, didn't he?
Yeah, he had his leg amputated, one of his legs amputated from the knee down. But anyway, he's been in there for like months. But they've had that place on lockdown for like 2 months. So we have to go and like catch him like when he's being transported somewhere, when he's like on his way back. It's the only time we can see him. So we just stand back and wave. Sucks for him. It's like depressing as hell, It was depressing before, but
it's already depressing.
Now people can't even come see him. So, but I mean, I get that because, but the way I looked at it is like, how are the people that work there quarantined? Like they're the ones that are going to bring it in. The workers, the employees, the staff. I don't know. Very odd.
Those are the people that are supposed to have masks. I mean, I'm sure you've seen people out and about with masks. Like, the average citizen isn't really supposed to have masks.
I haven't really been anywhere. I bought dog food like 2 weeks ago. That's the only time I've even been anywhere besides work and home.
I mean, I've been out a bunch of times, but that's only because I live like right on the parking lot where my Shoppers Drug Mart and my grocery store are. But I was at Walmart about a week and a half ago, and that's fairly far. And that same week, I was downtown for the first time, and the only time in like a last month, because I was able to go down and pick up my comics from my store.
That's right.
Because they were doing a thing where people could come down like maybe like one at a time. Honestly, it's not even that I really wanted my comics. I mean, I did, but it was more because I wanted to help them, because a store like them could really go under at a time like this. I'm sure you've heard, there's no new comics coming out. It's a really bad time. Not to pick on it. It's a bad time for every industry, right? But I just mean same thing with the comics. Like nothing's coming out.
Why is that?
It's all been halted.
They've just stopped.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I think the sales are gonna be down. Well, they obviously are going to be down, but
yeah, because I mean, there's quite a bit of like in the process of making comics nowadays, you can do a lot without having to like work together at all. Like a whole bunch of people work together to make a comic, but they never have to be in the same room to do it.
Right.
So, yeah,
I saw McFarlane doing some stuff, and he was like working on this like huge, like it's not ink anymore. It's all like on a tablet type thing.
Yeah,
it's really cool, but I guess.
I mean, he's going to be fine because he's like rich. But yeah, a lot of artists, they're doing commissions now, right? They're trying to get people to like order commissions of various things because they don't have their regular work to do.
Like on an individual basis?
Yeah, I guess so. Because it's all, like I said, I follow a lot of like artists and stuff on my Twitter feed, so I'll see things up where they'll like show stuff that they like just did, and they're like, you can order this, so I can get paid for something. I'd like to help them, but
starving artists, man, it sucks. I mean, it sucks in general. At times like this, it's awful.
Right. I mean, it's tough all over. I get that, but yeah, some people have been kind of mean about it because they're just because they're like artists don't really contribute anything. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, fine, just stop watching Netflix and
exactly. What are you doing right now at home? An artist did that. But that's just ignorant people for you.
Oh yeah. As we said, we can always count on like at bad times and times of crisis for like ignorant people to like really shine. To really.
When Coachella gets canceled and you just say, people are gonna die, man. Let's just do it.
I know. What's most annoying about those people that really want to just defy the rules, like how stupid they are. Like they can't understand it because they almost see it as an act of bravery. They're like, I'm willing to take the risk. For fuck's sake, it's not about your risk. It's the fact that you could expose other people without their consent. This isn't just a thing like, okay, well, it's my health and I choose to risk it. It's not that situation, you fucking morons.
It's these young fucks that are going to get it. Be totally fine. They're not going to be really harmed by it, but they're going to go spread it around to older folks. And that they're the problem. They are the problem. Like people that are doing the quarantine and doing what they're supposed to be doing. This shit would be gone by now if there wasn't stupid people like that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm really annoyed about the way it's gotten to Nova Scotia and parts of Canada because we weren't that bad, really. It was just because there were so many people that, like, refused to, like, cancel their vacations.
Yeah, that's not smart, man.
Like, they're, like, the main reason there's any cases in places like Nova Scotia. I'm not saying there would never, like, obviously something would slip through, but it wouldn't be numbers like this if it weren't for those idiots that were like, well, I'm still going to take my trip and come back and not self-isolate.
Crazy,
Plus, this is the time of year when the snowbirds are coming back from the States anyway. And that just, yeah. So, anyway. Sorry, people. I know that the last few weeks but that's what's going on in the world, so we have to talk about it. But I'm hoping that I'm not going to make any projections. We're definitely in for another month of this, but I think maybe in May we'll be able to see some light at the end of the tunnel.
Hope so. Warmer weather hopefully will help.
Yeah, I'm still cold here at night, but we've had some warmer days. The other day was probably the warmer day of the year. I mean, as far as warm goes, where I live, that's still way off. Like t-shirt weather, that's way off. But even a bit warmer can help, I'm sure.
We're like unseasonably cool right now. I was telling my wife, like normally we're like already hitting 90 degrees and shit by now, but of course, right now we're still
Just because
like,
this is happening.
Yeah, I know. It sucks, man. It's not that I want the heat, but I would like for this virus to go away. But yeah, we're still like 80 is the highest. It's getting the next week or so.
Yeah, well, we're not approaching 70 yet, so we got some. But I mean, that's pretty normal. As I said, April is the most schizophrenic month around here. April could be anything, pretty much.
But I wanted to ask you real quick. Like, I'm seeing this lady Snowblood, the manga, is on like Kindle and this Cosmology or whatever it's called.
Oh, Comixology.
Comixology, yeah, which I've done before. That's how I read that the Umbrella Academy. That's where I read that was on there.
Comixology is really popular. A lot of people use it. There's a lot of stuff on there.
I was going to ask you, how do you feel about that format? I just don't. I can't. I don't like it as much as having the physical copy in my hand.
I mean, I get why it's useful, but yeah, I'm the same way, right? You know, that's why we have. Why we're who we are. We're physical media type people.
I mean, I can read a book on there, no problem. But it's just the format of a graphic novel.
Yeah, but this whole situation, as we said, is like starting to put like the final nail in the coffin for a lot of this stuff, and comics is part of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'll do whatever I can as one person to try to keep that going as long as possible. Because, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I like holding physical things just like you do.
Yeah,
and I like going out and getting them.
I don't know. I feel like I have a better experience. Maybe I just need a bigger tablet or something. I just need like a massive iPad, like one of those fucking 20-inch things, whatever they are.
Yeah. Well, that's what like I said, if in a few years I do follow through with this plan to go live in Japan, I'm definitely going to get something like that so that I can, because obviously I can't take my comic collection with me.
Right.
So I'll be doing all sorts of stuff digitally, but I'm still here for now. And, while I do that, I love having all my books around me. It's funny. I think I said this before, but like even before any of this happened, I wasn't a germaphobe, but I was always really good about like just not touching stuff in public. In fact, it was almost a game to me. Like I would try to get into buildings without opening the door, let somebody else open the door, and I'd slip in behind them and stuff like that. The one place I always touch everything is the bookstore. I go to the bookstore and I just run my fingers along the spines of the books and the aisles. I touch everything and I look at it. There's something I find very calming and peaceful about being surrounded by books.
Well, that's probably a safe thing to touch too. You think about, door handles and knobs and buttons on stuff. That's the problem there is.
Yeah.
Common things. They say those touch pads that everyone's using now, they're like the worst.
Yeah.
The touch screens that are popping up everywhere.
Yeah. Luckily, for like my debit card and stuff, there's a lot of things where you just, flash, right? You just hold it out and it goes that. Which is pretty good. But as I said, I've been putting a lot of strain on my cards. Plus, the way my account's set up is like, I am hoping, I think my father even asked the bank about this, but they seem to confused about the question. Because what I was told, the way I set up the checking account I own, one of the things was I could actually only use my debit card 10 times in a month. If you go over that in a month, they would give me a charge on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really hoping at a time like this, they're waiving that because they shouldn't be forcing that on people.
Oh, yeah.
So, because if I haven't used it 10 times, I mean, it's only the 8th, and I probably already used it more than 5 times, I would say.
Wow.
I did pay in cash or something the other day. I was trying to be really apologetic about it. They didn't seem to care, but I mean, I don't want to make things worse. And I feel, as I said, I feel bad for these people that working in these conditions. It's pretty tough. When I went to Walmart that day, I actually I didn't have a ton of stuff, but it was a lot to carry for a half-hour walk. So I actually got a cab, and like the cab driver, he had like a mask and gloves on. I said, well, this is a pretty tough job to have at a time like this because, he just has to let people into his car or he's not doing anything.
probably not working as much either.
No, because people are out less in general.
Yeah.
And I said I'll miss that in a way, because it's like one thing about like walking around Halifax is like I'm used to it, just any city, right? But I'm aware now that when I'm out, there's still cars, but it's much less traffic, and it's just much more peaceful and enjoyable, to tell you the truth. I spend most of my life standing on corners waiting for lights to change while endless streams of traffic go around. So it's kind of interesting. And I mean, I'm used to empty streets because I'm used to like walking around in the middle of the night like an idiot, but there's still a big difference seeing it in the daytime.
Yeah.
But
seeing here that manga was written by the same writer as Lone Wolf and Cub.
Yeah, Kazuo Koike. So you can definitely see the similarities between the two.
Was that a manga also?
Oh yeah, really long running manga. I actually have some of those, the Dark Horse editions.
Well, I didn't realize that. I need to look these up. Not too bad. I don't really want to drop $20 on a paperback, but
yeah, that was a really popular long-running one. Because then there was a second series just called like New Lone Wolf and Cub. So here's the first volume.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm looking at right now.
Pretty big and thick.
Oh wow, that's huge.
Yeah, it's technically called an omnibus. There's a bunch of these though. I own 3, and there's more than that.
I was just saying that I didn't want to pay $20 for a paperback, but that thing's massive.
Oh yeah, it's a lot. It's a manga that really relies on I mean, they all rely on the art, obviously, but I mean, there's a lot of stuff like this. There's lots and lots of pages that have no dialogue at all. Go on that. So this movie is set at during the Meiji period, but this is back during the I guess this would be the Edo period, which is the period I most like in Japan, besides like the 20th century. Because this is when Japan and stuff like this was most kind of like RPGs. Because Japan was like an island, so it was isolated from the rest of the world. It was like a totally off by itself world, and it had, you know, ninja clans and samurai, and it had a palace and the government, but it also had little villages, and it had mountains, and it was, you know, that's why you see all the parallels with later on, like how samurai films have a lot in common with like westerns, because a lot of like something like why Seven Samurai works so well to be reworked into like the Magnificent Seven, because it's both the idea of like these small remote villages that are sort of far away from law and order, where they're at the mercy of things like roaming bandits and stuff. So I just love all this stuff. So yeah, this is Edo period Japan. So this is like the 1600s. So guns do exist, but they're rare and very, you know, archaic. They're just these long rifles that are very difficult to aim and reload and stuff. It's a good shot. What's interesting about this, it does have a similar sort of revenge angle, and it's called Lone Wolf and Cub. The whole point is he has a young son with him. And it's interesting because a lot of people might object to the fact that he's leading this dangerous life as an assassin, and he's bringing his young son into it. And it's kind of like pointed out and justified at the beginning, because he kind of like it wouldn't work in real life, but he basically gives the son, who is like too young to even understand, like a choice in the matter, and what the son does, he decides counts as like consent. Like, yes, you can bring me into this dangerous life. Yeah, it's cool. But yeah, it's really great. They've made various movies based on this. Actually, so in Kill Bill Volume 2, you might remember towards the end when she finally tracks Bill down and finds her daughter who she'd never met, and she's with her daughter. Her daughter actually asks if she can watch a movie called Shogun Assassin. Shogun Assassin is based on Lone Wolf and Cub.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually made the mistake. I bought Shogun Assassin instead of Lone Wolf and Cub. I didn't realize at the time. I thought they were two different things.
Yeah. But this is my favorite era of Japan, where it's all these like remote villages and beautiful scenery in the mountains, and Yeah, it's almost like it's like the closest thing in the world to me to like almost like a fantasy world setting, even though it was real. Because yes, you had the rest of the world, you had Europe and stuff, but it was all somewhere else and far away and unknown. You just had this sort of self-contained island with its own culture and rules, and people lived and died by the sword. It was cool. So yeah, there's definitely some interesting parallels between this and Lady Snowblood. Yeah, Love Song of Vengeance is the name of the second one. I'm trying to remember what actually happens in it. Because the movie ends kind of weird in this movie in that she, of course, winds up, after she finishes her task, she gets stabbed by Kinemura's daughter. And at first you might think she's going to die, and she like lies there all night, but then she like wakes up in the morning. It's like, she survived. So yeah, she survived.
So it picks up right after?
I don't know if it's right after. No, I think there is. It's not like right after. I think it lets you know that at least some amount of time has passed between. Like I don't think it's years later, but it's like some time has passed because she's like because in this now she's being the whole thing is like now she's kind of even though she wanted to like. Because here's how the manga ends. Spoiler for everybody. The manga has kind of an upbeat ending in a way because even though all this horrible stuff has happened, she does complete her mission and she actually throws her sword into the sea. And the whole idea is she's left this part. Now she's going to have a real life. Like she's left this behind, and that's how the manga ends. Whereas how the second movie picks up is now she's on the run because there's various like bounty hunters and people after her because of what she did, and there's police after her too. In fact, that movie has a pretty good opening, too, where she actually fights off a bunch of cops trying to arrest her. Yeah, I'll definitely watch the second one sometime later this week. Yeah, she does eventually get caught. I don't want to give everything away, but she gets brought in, and they convict her for, like, 37 murders, and they're going to, like, execute her. Yeah, it gets pretty heavy. But then the whole thing, and then it almost turns into something like... kind of like a Escape from New York type deal, and again, this predates Escape to New York, where like the magistrate or whoever it is in power is willing to like pardon her if she completes a mission. So that's what's going on in this movie.
Cool. I may try to watch that tonight.
Yeah, actually, as far as like making some commentary about the time period, the second one does more so than the first one, because remember I said how like during this period this is where Japan is starting to transition into Imperial Japan. Mm-hmm. There's more commentary about that in this because actually I think the target she's after is a guy who's kind of like an anarchist and a leftist, and the whole point is he opposes like the way the government's going, how the government's becoming very militaristic and and its foreign policy is becoming very aggressive and stuff like that. Like he's against that, and that's why he's become a target of the government. So yeah, there's more commentary. Because if you think about the history of Japan, how it goes, because once it became Imperial Japan, they became a very militaristic and aggressive country where they spent the end of the 19th century and the first half of the 20th century basically invading all their neighbors. I mean, any South Asian country has like been invaded by Japan at some point, and usually multiple times. And not just Southeast Asia. Obviously, the place that Japan has invaded the most is Korea. That goes back centuries. That was even before Japan was Imperial Japan. Japan had launched many different invasions of Korea. But yeah. This might even be a couple years later, because I think they might even make reference to the Russo-Japanese War, which was like 1905 or 1906. Which was sort of Japan arriving on the world scene in a way, because in the late 19th century and the start of the 20th century, while they were clashing with these various countries, the Western world still didn't know too much about Japan. And then for them to beat Russia in a war, like I think that like really shocked the Western world that such a thing could happen. It always reminds me of that really classic episode of The Simpsons. I remember 10 years ago, I read a list on MSN that named it as the best episode of The Simpsons. I disagree, but it's a really good one. It's Last Exit to Springfield. That's the one where Homer leads the strike at the plant. Remember the whole thing about the dental plan? Lisa needs braces. Dental plan. Anyway, there's a great flashback to like when Burns is like talking about how annoying unions are, and then there's a flashback to his boyhood days, like in like 1904 or something like that, when he's a little kid and his grandfather's taking him on a tour of this factory, and the whole thing is like they make atoms or something like that. Anyway, they take one kid, basically voiced by the squeaky voiced teen character, and they like drag him away, and they're like, turn out your pockets. And they count, it's like 6 atoms. He stole it. They're going to drag him away. And the kid goes, you can't treat the working man this way. One day we'll form a union so that we can band up against you. And then he goes, and then we'll go too far and become shiftless and corrupt. And the Japanese will eat us alive. And Burns' grandfather goes, the Japanese? Those sandal-wearing goldfish tenders? Bosh! Flimshaw! And then they like drag him away. Then when it cuts back to Burns, he goes, we should have listened to that boy. Instead of, we walled him up in the abandoned coke oven. Great moment. But yeah, but it is a good little slice of sort of how like America and Europe and stuff sort of saw Japan at the turn of the century. Oh, they were this funny little country with their weird ways, but they were certainly harmless. Of course, they'd be like one of the major players of the 20th century. But anyway, it's a really long, extended way of saying that, yeah, Snowblood 2 talks a little bit more about sort of the political climate. But it's definitely a cool movie, and I also have it recorded, so I'll probably watch it later this week. You know, it still has a lot of the same elements in it. But the difference here now, though, is like she's not on a quest for revenge. So you think, oh, well, that kind of takes all of her meaning out of it, but they do a pretty good job. But of course, the theme of this movie is revenge. And as I said, as far as revenge movies goes, they're not usually that deep. It's kind of one of the deeper ones, not necessarily in anything it's philosophically saying, but just it's cool artistic presentation. My favorite revenge movie is probably The Crow, which is very emotional and deep because while it is about revenge, it does try to be about love and loss and things like that. The whole point being that what's his name wrote it as a way to cope with the feelings of anger and loss he was having of having lost his fiance to a drunk driver. And we probably talked about it before, just the tragedy of the whole thing, because considering what happened with the movie. Because even before there was a movie, he already felt some guilt about The Crow when it became like a very successful underground comic, because he thought, what am I doing? I've taken like my feelings of grief and sorrow and turned them into something sort of angry. And have I, am I making a story that I'm profiting now that basically glorifies revenge? So he was already dealing with that sort of guilt and doubt. And then the movie happens and Brandon Lee tragically dies making it.
Yeah,
and, man. Like, he wouldn't take any money for the movie. And I don't think the director would either. The director thought of it as blood money. Like, I can understand that. Like, nobody's at fault or anything, but you can understand how that would affect you. Because things like guilt are not rational, right? Because all I can think is if this wasn't a movie, Brandon would still be alive,
That was same director as Dark City, right?
Yeah, Alex, is it Proyas or how do you say it?
Yeah.
Something like that. But yeah, Australian guy, I think.
Do you think that would have been as popular if Brandon Lee hadn't died on set?
I mean, a lot of people who don't like the movie make that argument. And I guess, obviously, it's going to get a bump from it. But I'm just one of those people that always adored the movie and thinks it's really good. So I think a good movie is a good movie.
I'll be honest, man.
From that.
I've never told you guys this, but, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of it. I mean, yeah. I wasn't. I mean, I watched it again last year. It was a Devil's Night, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think around the same time you watched it. Yeah.
Yeah. And
I was just like, maybe I missed something. And I don't know. It just doesn't resonate with me. I mean, it's not bad or anything. It's just not.
I actually think it's better than the comic. And I don't say that much. I think the movie is better than the comic. And the comic's very good. Because the movie expands and changes some characters for the better. Like, the characters are more interesting. Like, the cop is not really that interesting in the book. But Ernie Hudson is my favorite thing Ernie Hudson's ever done. Like, to me, that blows away Ghostbusters. I love that character. That's all I would talk to him about.
I would just be talking about Oz the whole time.
Albrecht, I think that's his name. It was Albrecht. And the same thing with some of those like punks. Like in the book, they're just sort of like punks that don't have much to distinguish them. But I really like that group. They have a lot of flair and personality because they're played by cool actors, cool character actors that I really like. So that's why I think the movie's actually better than that because the characters are given more depth and they're made more interesting. And of course, the main bad guy, Dollar Bill, like Michael Wincott. I mean, he's always been a great sort of villain type guy, but to me, that's his best thing. He says so many great things in that movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's too bad that Michael Wincott really fell off when he got older. Like he was like one of the character actors of the '90s. He was in so many big movies, but the 2000s. And I mean, it shouldn't be the type of roles he played. Getting older shouldn't have really slammed doors for him either. So
No.
I never really understood why he fell off the map the way he did.
No, generally character actors, they age with the parts they get,
Right.
Or vice versa. The parts they get age as they age.
Yeah.
Like
what was the last big movie he was in? Like Alien Resurrection?
Oh, really? Has it been that long?
That's like 97. He was probably in a few. I'm not saying nothing, but I mean, that was probably maybe the last big movie he was in.
He may have died, man.
I don't think so.
No, you're right. You're right. I know.
I probably pointed this out before, but he's Canadian, which is kind of cool.
Some of those guys have passed away that were in Crow.
Oh, probably.
Let's see. Oh, he was in Basquiat. That's a good film.
Speaking of manga, he's actually in the live action Ghost in the Shell, which I still have not made myself watch.
I'm not going to watch it.
I don't think I'm going to either. I just don't think.
He was in the TV series Westworld. Didn't you watch that?
I only watched the first season. Maybe he's in the second season.
He was Old Bill. I think that was in the first season. I haven't seen but just the first either.
Yeah. I loved the first season, but I don't really have any interest beyond that. I think the first season is great standalone. The second season is just a confusing mess. I was like, don't bother. But the first season I stand by. I think is really good. In fact, I'll probably rewatch it at some point. He was in Along Came a Spider, where he was decent. That's 2001. So you could say maybe that was the last big movie he was in. Not a lot of stuff in the 2000s. But as you said, he did have some TV stuff too. What's great is he was on an episode. He was on 2 different episodes of The Littlest Hobo. I don't remember that, but
that's what a name for a show.
That was one of my favorite shows as a kid. So there were 2 different versions. This was the 80s version, because the original version from the 60s, the second version, which I watched, was from 79 to 85. Shot entirely on video. It was about a dog that just went across Canada, stopping in small towns and performing good deeds. And it has one of my favorite top 3, honestly, like theme songs. I love that song.
Is hobo a PC term? It seems like it's like the N-word for homeless people.
I guess maybe that's how we'd see it now. I don't know. But back then, it was the term of endearment, the littlest hobo, because he went around to different towns.
I think of like a guy with a sack on the end of a stick over his shoulder.
Yeah, a classic.
Or like, jumping railroad cars.
But yeah, I love that show.
Never seen it. Is it a Canadian show?
Yeah, it's Canadian.
Oh, okay. Probably
Canadian, fairly low budget show. As I said, it was shot on video, but it ran for about 6 seasons through the 80s.
It's something I definitely would have watched though, because I love shows with dogs in them.
Yeah, this was the best show with dogs by far. I can't think of anything that was this good. And the other thing was, it sometimes, obviously, because the dog did so many different stunts, they did sometimes use different dogs, but like most of it was one dog. And the dog's real name was London. And I always wanted to get a German Shepherd and name him London after him. But yeah, it's a crazy show when you think about some of the stuff he does. Like he sometimes, like I remember one, like he helped a kid train for there was like this kid that was like getting picked on by bullies, and the dog helped him train for like a biathlon or something. He's did stuff like foil robberies. He saved kids. Like one kid, like little kid, ate rat poison, and the kid saved the kid. Like he saves people from burning buildings. Like anything you can think of, he solved it. But you should definitely just go on YouTube and watch the opening, because It's such a wonderful song. I love that song. I won't sing it here, but damn right I know the words. And like a lot of songs from back then, it had multiple verses. It wasn't just like some quick thing, right? Because back in the day, songs were long, TV songs. But yeah, that's like top 3 for me. That's right up there with like Greatest American Hero. So here's something I also kind of missed in the movie, where I thought, and it says like I think on like synopsises and stuff that when so she tracks down Okono and she kills all, and she has to fight all her men and she kills them all, and then in the confusion, remember Okono runs away, but then when she finds her, she's hanging, right? It seems pretty clear to me that she knew she was already wounded and she knew she couldn't get away, and so she hanged herself. But I'm almost positive that towards the end, when she tracks down the last guy, he says some offhand comment that makes it sound like he's the one that killed her. But maybe I just misunderstood the line. It's almost, I think it's something that the reporter actually says, like something like, "I knew you were alive once she died," or something. And there's another twist that we didn't mention for the people. So she eventually meets up with this reporter who's been following her because he wants to do like a series of articles on her story. And he says, this will help. You're trying to draw the last one out because at this point they think the other guy's dead. So Okono's all that's left. And so she sort of inadvertently winds up teaming up with him. Then the twist there is that the last criminal was actually this guy's father.
Wow.
Who he's willing to like help her kill. And winds up getting killed by him. And sort of her, because she impales the both of them.
Yeah, that was really cool.
It was cool, but I was like, couldn't she have like shoved him aside? Did she have to ram it through him? It's not like they were together. I mean, he was already probably going to die because he charges him in a corner. He takes several gunshots, so he's probably going to die anyway. But they're like together. He's pressing him against the corner. I mean, the reporter's pressing against the target, and she just runs up and rams the sword through him to get to her. I keep saying him, man. Find the names. Cool.
Yeah, I just felt like she was so determined to kill that dude.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. She was so determined.
And she had probably already written him off as dead. Like back in those days, infection's going to set in.
Sure. So that's Gishiro, kind of the final boss. I really like that actor, too. He's played by a guy named Eiji Okada. A lot of the characters, they're not that particularly special or memorable, but I really did like him as Gishiro, who had gone so far as to fake his death at sea to try to throw people off the scent. Yeah, I remember the first time I watched it, like I actually was really surprised that she actually killed a double, because all I thought at first was, well, that was kind of anticlimactic, and it's like, oh, it's not him. It's kind of a cool moment.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And here's another thing where we talk about tropes and cliches and stuff. So there's another one that we've seen in lots of movies, but again, I don't know if we've seen anything earlier than this, where her final quarry is this guy, and to hunt him down, the place she finds him is at a masquerade ball where everybody's like dancing and wearing masks. That's in a lot of stuff.
It is.
Like, where spies either have to do some sort of mission while it's going on, or there's some sort of target, and they're at the masquerade ball, and you've got multiple people, and they're dressed up and stuff. In this one, it's actually pretty straightforward. It's not like there's a bunch of people. It's her and the reporter looking for one guy. But, sometimes it's like, okay, this person's in this part of the room and they're dressed like this, and this person, just to take advantage of the scenario. But that's in a lot of stuff, for sure.
Lots of stuff. Lots of TV shows, too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can think of like 5 episodes of Alias.
Yeah, that's like the whole thing, right? There's like
she had to, put on this gown and, she's all dolled up and just to get in and hack the code. Look, that was something I've seen recently where that was in.
It's like you said, it's especially in spy stuff. It's in a lot of spy stuff. But other things too. But and I'm sure, as I said, this is 73. It'd probably be done before that, but this is still pretty early example. It's before it was like a really commonplace thing. Also, that party had foreigners in it. In a lot of Japanese movies, you don't see foreigners, but this has, some presumably Americans in it. You even hear some English spoken. And although it doesn't turn into a huge bloodbath, it obviously is like the main inspiration for the final part of that section of Kill Bill 1 in the House of Fallen Leaves or whatever, right? Like the showdown at House of Fallen Leaves or whatever it was called. Because it's kind of a similar thing, except she doesn't wind up fighting a whole team of people there. I think the first time I watched it, I was kind of anticipating something like that because of Kill Bill. I thought, oh, she's going to fight a whole bunch of people here, but she doesn't. She'd already fought the whole bunch of people at the other place going after Okono. She had like a weird, what they called a sand bomb, like in the thing in her hair. It's like she's pretty prepared.
Yeah, the subtitles.
Right? Because she, besides her main blade, she had like a really short blade that she took out of her hair. She like stuck it at a guy's eye. Remember when she went to the gambling house and they were gonna like kill him themselves for cheating, and she was like, "Spare his life." I'm like, why should we? And she like sticks this right by his eyes, like, "Okay, let him go."
Yeah, the sand bomb. I didn't know if I was supposed to know what's going on or what there. They were like, "Hold your breath, be careful."
Yeah.
What the fuck's going on? I mean, is that a thing? Is that a real thing?
I don't know either. I just kind of went with it.
Wow,
I'm surprised there isn't more information like on like Wikipedia and stuff about this movie. Because I don't know, I think of it as a fairly iconic type of movie.
Especially since, the success of Kill Bill, you think it would have more.
Right.
No, I'm not seeing anything under Sand Bomb.
No idea.
Before that, I did have a picture of Lady Bullseye pulled up.
Oh yeah.
And they didn't skimp on her bust.
They never do in comics.
Yeah.
Usually in comics, the more deadly a chick is, the bigger her bust is.
10-inch waist, 50-inch bust.
I mean, it is kind of unfortunate in some ways, but I think it's okay for certain characters. Like, I like how they just lean into it with the queen of all those, which probably talked about before, Power Girl. Power Girl has such cleavage and such endowment that, like, it's actually commented on within the comic.
Pull up an image of Power Girl.
Plus, a big part of her costume is like she has like a little window here too.
Yeah.
Better.
Yeah, that's But that's the whole thing. I mean, that's the it's a comic. It's larger than life.
Yeah. Plus, it's kind of weird because like sometimes like an artist will sort of like tone that down for certain characters, but it's only one artist, and then another artist just brings her right back up, right? Like you have a character that's been around like as long as say Black Widow. You'll see her, she's had small breasts at some points, and she's had enormous breasts at other points, so it just all sort of depends upon who was drawing her at the time.
I'm seeing all sorts of like porn stars like cosplaying as Power Girl.
I guess she'd be the number one for anybody that had, again, large breasts.
A bit much.
But as I said, at least with Power Girl, it's consistent.
Right.
And you can say, well, that's kind of a stupid thing to be consistent about, but I don't know. Okay.
Why is there a little window?
Yeah. I think that even that's commented on, like that she does use it to like distract enemies.
Ah, okay.
Because why not? As I said, just lean into it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we're going to pretend that there is a world that has like this many superheroes and super beings, at least some of them, not nearly as many as it shows, but at least some of them would have large breasts, and she's just one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, in the comics, a lot of the time, like all the guys are really jacked and big, and but usually there's justification for a lot of it because a lot of them have like, if not superpowers, then they're still like in incredible shape because obviously that's part of being the character.
Yeah, I used to watch this show called Botched. It was all about people that had really bad plastic surgery. And it was people like, girl wanted to be a Barbie doll, another one wanted to be like an anime character, And you can't do it. You can't make your body look like these characters. Another
And
guy
if you did, it wouldn't even look good, right?
No.
Like, I'm super attracted to anime characters and stuff, but I realize that in the physics of the real world, it would look horrifying.
Right. And there was one guy that wanted to look like Superman, and he was an Asian guy, but he had surgery to make himself look not Asian. And he had all sorts. He didn't actually work out at all. He had all these implants put in, like muscle implants, like bicep implants and stuff.
So if you don't work out, you get like big muscle implants. Are you strong? Like, can he bench press stuff now, or is it all for show? Like, does it like tie into his real muscles and like make them better?
I don't know. I would think it would be all kinds of complications.
So you're just full of a bunch of like lumps that are just for show that don't actually do anything.
Well, okay. In other countries, they do all sorts of this. They just inject silicone like directly into your, like girls do it to their ass. Like, have you ever seen girls with like really like unnaturally large asses? Like they've gone to it's a big thing in like Brazil and South America.
It makes a certain amount of sense because I know Brazil has a lot of like hot supermodel types, but they can't have that many just normally. There has to be something going on, and as you said, that's part of it.
Yeah, I mean it seems like a really painful process too to just have it's who knows how many times you have to stab that ass to and get that in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some movie or show, I can't remember, where like the main guy, like his girlfriend made him get butt in. Oh, it was Saving Silverman.
Really?
Saving Silverman, part of like the abusive relationship he has, remember, that Jason Biggs' character has, is she makes him get butt implants.
And I love that movie. I need to watch that again.
Yeah. As I've said many times, I think it's a really underrated movie, and I think it's too bad that that's like the only time that Steve Zahn and Jack Black worked together. I thought they had tremendous comedic chemistry.
I agree.
They definitely could have done some more movies together as, slightly different characters.
Or just, I don't know, man. It seems like the comedy's dead now.
Definitely comedic duos are dead.
Does it seem that way to you? Like,
because it used to be like comedic duos were a thing, right? Like, obviously Richard Pryor and what's his name? Willy Wonka.
Mm-hmm. Gene Hackman. Fuck, I know you're talking about it.
Anyway, it'll come to me later. But and it's too bad that Christopher Farley died because he and David Spade had a good thing going.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like the comedy itself is like it can't exist in this uber PC world we live in.
I don't know if that's true.
I mean, when's the last time you saw a good comedy that was released recently?
A recent comedy, I don't know. There's also good shows, comedy-wise.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I used to love comedy movies. Me and my wife used to watch them all the time.
But I mean, I don't think that could be the whole thing. For instance, I saw a horrible comedy last night that was super un-PC, and it just made everything worse. That was Waiting. I watched 2005's Waiting, a movie about a restaurant that'll make you never want to go to a restaurant.
You didn't like the Batwing? Doing the Batwing?
I thought it was like a really disgusting attempt to like, oh, we're gonna do like Clerks, but just
it is really homoerotic too. Like you think a way to show your genitals to another person? I mean, to another man?
Yeah. At first, I thought they were just punking him about it, but that was like a thing that was going on for so many. Okay, so you know how Dane Cook is in that movie. For so many years, I thought that Dane Cook was like the main guy. I thought Dane Cook was like Ryan Reynolds' character. I didn't even know Ryan Reynolds was in it. I thought Dane Cook was the main guy.
Who was Dane Cook in it?
He's just one of the line cooks.
That's right. You're right. It was Ryan Reynolds' movie, really.
Yeah. But for many years, for whatever reason, I didn't know that. I mean, anyway, it was a terrible movie. I thought it was awful on all levels. Like, just I like crass stuff, but just none of it worked, and the whole thing just disgusts you.
I just think it hasn't aged very well.
I don't know. I don't think I would have liked it back then either. Because as I said, I think, like you said, maybe in today's climate, a lot of that stuff wouldn't fly. But I'm thinking back then, it still wasn't funny.
I liked the Andy Milonakis acting like urban, whatever you want to call street person, rapper.
Yeah, I have no idea who those guys were. Yeah, their rap at the end was pretty funny. I'll give it that, but the movie was just garbage.
He's not a bad rapper.
Oh, he's a real rapper. Okay.
No, I mean he doesn't, not professionally, but
yeah,
he's
did a pretty
the
good
guy
job.
he's got that disease that he always looks like a child. Like he still looks like he's like 12 years old.
Oh, okay. I thought he was just like some 14-year-old in the movie.
No, he's older than me. He's probably like 45 years old.
This is 2005. Okay, so yeah, he would have at least been like 30.
Yeah.
No, I just figured he was 14, 15. I mean, all he was a busboy, so it seemed believable to me that he was a kid.
Look up his age. Born 76.
But anyway, I really wish I hadn't watched it. It was a complete waste of time.
Well, there's a part 2. If you want to see some more of it.
None of the same actors.
Justin Long is the lead in this one.
Justin Long was the lead. Well, okay. Well, he's still like kind of the lead in that one. Like he and Reynolds are the two main characters.
Yeah. I'm thinking like, is this when Justin Long like became a thing? Because
just around that time, yeah.
It was right around like this and Dodgeball and Jeepers Creepers, and he was
mid-2000s.
Right. He was the boyfriend in Drag Me to Hell, also.
Yeah, I own that movie, but I barely remember it. Might watch it again.
Yeah, it's okay. I wish I liked it more than I do.
But yeah, he was in a bunch of movies mid-2000s. He was in one like he had like something about having a long distance relationship with Drew Barrymore or something. He was in the Die Hard movie in 2007.
It was like baseball or something, wasn't it? The Drew Barrymore. Something like baseball.
I don't know. I never saw it. I think it was, the whole point was like they had jobs or something that made it. The whole point was it was a long distance relationship. Like, wow, what an interesting movie. Nobody's ever done that before.
I never understood the appeal. Like, he's not a leading man. He's like a nerdy, like, side character.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's kind of cool that he gets kind of leading man-esque roles here and there because it's kind of going against type. I don't know. Because, yeah, I mean, that's how he came into it, like, being a super nerdy character, like one of his early roles in Galaxy Quest.
Yeah, I was about to say that. Have we talked about him recently? It seems like we talked about him, like, a couple of weeks ago.
It's entirely possible. Totally possible. Anyway, like, it's weird because, yeah, I was pretty sure I wasn't going to like the movie anyway, but sometimes when, like, I don't feel like concentrating on a movie much, I'll put on a comedy that I'm pretty sure I won't like anyway just to see it. So that's kind of what happened last night because it was already pretty late when I started it because it was too late for me to want to put on something I would really want to concentrate on. I was like, I'll put this on. It'll be good background noise. But it was like, I really actually regret it because it just really upset me and grossed me out.
Didn't they all, there was one point when they all like rub their balls or something on the food.
Yeah, they do all sorts of disgusting things. Like spit on it. Somebody like shoves it like part between their ass. Like it's awful. Like there's a place in hell for anybody that has ever done that at a restaurant. Like nothing justifies that. I don't care how rude a person is to you. Rude people deserve a lot, but they don't. That's just disgusting. Like I said, it makes you would never want to go to a restaurant to think that anybody would ever do this. And they've had like hidden camera shows that have shown that in real life, people doing disgusting things. I'm just like, I'm never going to a restaurant in the U.S. ever.
Peeing and jizzing in food and
yeah.
Like, for the record, I worked in food service for probably a decade, and I never did anything remotely like that.
I know, and I'm sure you didn't even work with anybody, because I think that people like that are rare, because they're so sick. Like, I don't think most people think, hey, that's a funny joke. Like, no, it's awful. But yeah, that's one of the things that, like, Dane Cook does in the movie.
And Louise...
And I hate to say it, and I don't think I'm racist, because it has nothing to do with that, but Luis Guzman, or whatever his name is, just disgusts me in general. I find him repulsive.
Yeah.
And part of that is burned into my brain from one movie. I told you this before. So Adam Sandler, a few years ago, because he's Adam Sandler, signed that deal with Netflix to make a bunch of movies. He made a bunch of half-ass movies. So I watched, like, the very first one called The Do-Over.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a scene in that movie where a woman who's fairly old, she might even be 50, but a very attractive for her age woman, is engaged in a three-way with Luis Guzman and David Spade, and it's the most repulsive thing I've ever seen in my life. I was like, this actress does not deserve this. I know it's not real sex, it's simulated sex, but still, she does not deserve this. This is the most awful, heinous thing I've ever seen.
It shows it?
Well, it shows it, simulated.
Yikes!
It shows them like taking her on, one at one end and one at the other.
Oh, Eiffel Tower.
And it's fucking it's just disturbing. And yes, it is more disturbing because she's attractive. I'll say that. It doesn't make me a bad person. But yeah, seeing this older but quite attractive woman between those two, and yeah, there's even a whole thing about like Gizmon's like balls like slapping and stuff. It's awful. But anyway, so that's probably one of the main reasons. But yeah, and he's really disgusting in this movie. He has like this inexplicably really hot girlfriend who's really stupid that he's freaking into having sex and stuff with. Yeah, the whole thing was just upsetting. I really, really regret it. But oh well. So yeah, I guess I haven't seen a good comedy lately. Well, I mean, I did see one from. Actually, I watched one from around the same period that I like quite a bit. A Will Ferrell movie. What is it? Is it just called The Election, or?
Yeah.
Or no, it's called the Campaign.
Campaign. Okay.
Yeah, with Zach Galifianakis. I still like that movie. I think that holds up pretty well. It's not great, but it's pretty good. So yeah, I watched that a few days ago.
So, yeah, I used to like Zach Galifianakis. He kind of fell off.
Well, you should watch the Between the Two Ferns movie, though.
Oh,
you'll like that.
Now that I have Netflix back, I'll check that out.
That's kind of him, like, back to his roots, too. That's, like, his, like, original style type comedy. That's funny. It's just basically him asking, like, incredibly awkward questions to celebrities.
I know we've talked about it before, but, I mean, I used to watch Zach Galifianakis, like, 25 years ago doing stand-up, you know?
Wow.
Or he wasn't standing. He was sitting at a piano, but
I mean, yeah.
His whole bit.
Yeah, you were pretty dialed in when it came to comedians and comedy. Like, most of these people I only heard about when they started to get more famous. Like, I probably only first heard of Zach Galifianakis maybe 15 years ago. Definitely not 2025.
Really got popular with The Hangover, right?
Yeah, which I don't think those movies are any good.
I don't either.
And they're the same movie 3 times.
I saw one of them in the theater. I think it may have been part 2. Yeah, they're all the same thing. Like, don't they all end with Mike Tyson like playing the piano or some shit?
Yep.
It's like stupid humor, you know. It's humor for stupid people, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I mean, there's a lot of that around. But I know we've had this conversation too. Just about a year or two ago, see the movie that I think is the ultimate example of that, which is Mike and Dave Need Wedding Dates. Mm-hmm. Because that movie is a celebration of stupid, shallow, empty people, and we're supposed to be rooting for them.
Yeah, when you mentioned that, I didn't tell you that I saw that in the theater.
I don't know. That must have been upset. That must have been disappointment.
Yeah, it sucks because there's some funny people in the movie, you know. It's like Aubrey Plaza's funny. I forget the other female lead, but
I don't even know Aubrey Plaza, but she popped up in the Child's Play movie that I watched a little while ago. They even make a joke about her being like a slut when she was a teen. Because like, you have like a 14-year-old son. She's like, I had a very productive sweet 16. I'm like, yeah, you did. Yeah, at least they addressed it, because it's like, yeah, why does Aubrey Plaza have like a 14-year-old son? Oh, that's why.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of. I get it. I just don't know why you wanted to uncomfortably work it into the movie, but okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of stupid shit like that in that movie. Questions that nobody cares about.
Yeah.
Or answers to questions nobody cares about.
Well, that's kind of like Remake 101. Most like remakes is doing things like that, right? But go again, I know we disagree. I actually think it's fine. I don't dislike it at all, and think in many ways it makes a lot more sense and is a lot more entertaining than the original. Which the original is just so silly. It's just I just can't get over how silly the original is. I enjoy it, but like I can't think of it as like a horror movie.
It's completely different tones.
Yeah, it really is.
I mean, I get it if you want to play it up for comedic, but you know, the first Child's Play at least wasn't like that. They kind of worked, kind of like the Nightmare on Elm Street films. They got stupider as they went along.
They did, but the difference for me is I thought they were stupid right from the start. I mean, he's doing this weird fake tough guy voice.
If you can't get past the original concept of the film, it's going to be tough to get past the film itself. Like I mean,
I don't think I can. Like, I'm an open-minded person, but this is one of the times where I just really can't get past it. It's like he's this not scary guy who dies in a shootout in like a toy store, who has like weird voodoo connections, and fixes like
yeah, that's what you hate is the voodoo shit.
But I don't like the guy either. Like, he wasn't scary to begin with. He was just some criminal, you know?
Serial killer.
But he didn't look or act like a serial killer. We didn't see him doing any sort of Hannibal Lecter shit. We saw him have a shootout with a cop. Like, and he's not scary looking. He's just some greaseball.
What you're saying is we needed more character development on Charles Lee Ray or Charles.
Yeah, I mean, instead of just slapping serial killer on him, show him as a serial killer. All I saw was he was some greaseball with long hair who got into a shootout with a cop and then started babbling nonsense at a doll, and yeah. Who talks like this, which is not scary. This is not a scary voice. Hey, Andy. I don't know. Brad Dourif's a cool actor. He's done a lot of cool stuff, but you can't sell that. There's just no selling it. There's nothing creepy or scary about it. Talk about dialogue in that movie. I've got a date with a 6-year-old boy. Oh, that's
hilarious.
You can't even say that about that aging. That shouldn't have flown in 1988.
He's gonna be a bro.
Oh man.
But Aubrey Plaza is a year younger than you, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's not too crazy.
No, it's not too crazy because I think about Wednesday here, and I think, I tell people, I have a 14-year-old daughter.
Is she 14, really?
She's 14.
Wow. Cats are crazy, man. Like, some cats live like 10 years, and some cats live like 25 years. It's so crazy.
Our 2 long-haired cats both died early. Leia was 9, and Simon was only 7.5.
Really? Wow.
But Wednesday's 14 and Sasha's 11. And Sasha's the healthiest pet we've ever had of any kind. He's never been sick in his life ever. Even Theo, who's just turning 2 in a couple days, he actually did have like a little bit like a fever or something like a couple weeks after we first got him. Like, it wasn't anything serious and he was fine. But Sasha, he's lived 11 years and he's never had to go to the vet for anything or do anything or take special medicine or anything. So, hope that continues.
Yeah.
What's funny about Wednesday is she had some sort of breathing condition, and as soon as I moved out of the basement and up here, it stopped completely. So clearly the horrible air in the basement and that rancid carpet we used to live on was hurting her. Yeah. You can even find old videos on my channel of her in the background coughing. She hasn't coughed in like 7 years. Or not 7 years. She hasn't coughed in like 4 years.
So allergies or something, right?
Yeah, it must have been allergies. Because she never does it anymore. But that used to be a regular thing where she would have coughing fits. Like, I took her to the vet a few times, found out it wasn't anything serious. She was fine. But people who didn't know would be alarmed by it. They'd be like, "Is your cat okay?" I'd be like, she's okay. I know it sounds bad, but she's okay. But she hasn't done that pretty much ever since we moved up here. So, very healthy. So you're right. So Aubrey Perez's character in that movie could have only had to have been about 21, 22. Not crazy.
Oldest cats, Green Puff, was 38 years, 3 days.
Well, that's the record Wednesday's going for. We've had that discussion.
We're going to beat it.
But there's no reason she can't clear 30.
That's so crazy to me that a cat can live that long. Because I've had, plenty of dogs that, die around 10 most of the time.
Cats do live longer than dogs.
Oh,
most cats I've heard of, they die around 20 at the latest.
Mm-hmm.
Years ago, before we got Wednesday and before we moved into the apartment, because when my sister and I moved into our first apartment together without a roommate, a year after we moved in, that's when we got Wednesday. But the apartment we lived in before that, with one of my friends, when the 3 of us lived together, there was this neighborhood cat that we called Crookshanks because he looked like the cat from kind of like Harry Potter. He was this big orange cat with sort of a squashed face, and he had really thick rugby player legs. Everybody in the neighborhood fed him. And they said he was 19 years old. So
that's old for an outside cat.
Yeah. And he used to come into our apartment and we'd give him like tuna and he would like slop it all over the place, barely eat any, and then just sort of leave. And And so we lived on the first floor of a house, and there were a whole bunch of loud Australians on the second floor, and he liked them better. Sometimes he'd come into the porch, and we'd be like, come on in, and he'd stand at the other door. It's like, oh, you fucker, you want to go upstairs? Fine, go play with the loud Australians that like seem to like drag the fridge around at night and play that game where you jump from furniture to furniture because the floor is lava. Oh my god, they were fun to live under.
Oh, they did that. People actually do that, huh?
Well, I don't know. I just mean that's what it sounded like, right? You ever see that YouTube video of the upstairs apartment people?
I don't think so.
That's pretty funny. You can just look it up. It's based on like all the stuff that like people living under here. Like it shows. It's like a mockumentary. It's like them dragging like a bowling ball across the floor and all sorts of crazy stuff. But yeah, just look up like upstairs people or something like that. You'll find it's pretty funny. Because I mean, pretty much anybody that's lived in that situation has always had a neighbor where it's like, what the fuck are they doing? Like I can't even conceive of what they could be doing. Right now, I'm enjoying it because it's kind of bad timing considering what's going on. But I guess when it's up, it's up. So the people that live on that side of me, they moved out, and that's empty. So I've been enjoying that because I can play music. So.
That's good.
And the apartment's open, so I was wandering around in it the other night.
Oh, really?
It's the exact floor plan of my apartment reversed.
Yeah.
So everything's just on the other side. I took some coat hangers, which was all that was left.
Strangely enough, the oldest living cat now is named Sasha.
Yeah, well, that's a good omen.
It's a tortoiseshell cat, whatever that is.
That's what Leia kind of was. Leia was she wasn't a calico. I think she was tortoiseshell. It's kind of like a calico. She might have been Maine Coon too.
Oh wait, no, calicos are always female. Is that right?
I don't know.
Or always male.
I can't remember. But Simon, of our cats, as far as breed goes, is the most interesting. Simon was a ragdoll, which are wonderful cats. I'd love to have a ragdoll again because they're just so friendly and floppy. But and the other thing about Simon was he might have actually been part snowshoe, which is a very rare kind of cat.
I'm familiar.
Yeah, they're really interesting. He had the same coloring as a snowshoe, but snowshoes aren't long-haired cats. He was long-haired, and he would look like a ragdoll. But while ragdolls are cats that always have blue eyes, they're usually a very bright blue. Simon's eyes are a pale blue, kind of like icy blue. And he had personality traits, all the ragdoll traits, but he also had the snowshoe traits, because snowshoes like to perch up high, and he liked that, and snowshoes like water, and he liked water. Of course, Theo is just an ordinary domestic short hair like Wednesday. He's a tabby, but a tabby's not a breed. But he's obsessed with water. It's his favorite thing in the world. Running water, especially. When my mother brushes her teeth in the morning, like a lot of bathrooms, they got 2 sinks in the bathroom. She sits in the sink next to her and watches her and tries to catch the water. He jumps in sinks. My parents still have to put the toilet lids down so he won't jump in toilets.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. When my mother takes a bath, he comes in, and sometimes he's fallen in with her.
Mm-hmm.
And that he doesn't freak out. Like you think if a cat hits the water, freaks out. No, he just lands in the water and is like, okay, I'm in the water. We have so Simon's big thing was he was very smart, and he drank from the water cooler. He could stand up and use the thing. Theo can't quite make the connection, but he's obsessed with finding out how. So late at certain points of night, he sits out in the kitchen next to it and waits for my mother or father to use it so he can come try to get the water. So, but yeah, he's obsessed with water. He's really weird. But his birthday's in a couple days. He's most of my family, including me, our birthdays are in April. But he's the first cat we've ever had, or pet of any kind we've had that actually has an April birthday. And unlike somebody like Wednesday, where we had to like a lot of our pets, we just had to sort of guesstimate their date of. We know Theo's actual birthday is April 11th. So yeah, my sister, father, and I all have April birthdays. And my mother has a May birthday. And I was born a bit early. I was supposed to be a May birthday. My mother says I threw off the balance because it was supposed to be 2 Aprils, 2 Mays, but I was born early and threw it off. But yeah, Theo's our first pet with an April birthday. So he'll be 2. So hopefully he has a long life in front of him. Anyway, we can circle back and finish on. We don't have to do a particularly long show tonight, I know. But I don't know. I know that as far as discussion goes, the movie's not particularly deep, but I think there's just a lot of cool stylistic traits that are worth commenting on that have influenced a lot of film, and not even just film, like TV and other art and stuff going forward. As we said, the femme fatale trope existed, but this was sort of a new special kind of wrinkle in it. Before that, the femme fatale was more like the one in like the noir movies, where they weren't necessarily, because the original femme fatales weren't necessarily physically dangerous. They were more like, they can manipulate people emotionally, and they were really smart at planning and stuff. And yeah, they might shoot somebody, but they weren't necessarily badass. Then you get into like maybe the 60s, and you have the idea of sort of the cool female spy. There's some female spies, I think, in some of the 60s Bonds, but you don't really see any badass ones until the 70s, like in The Spy Who Loved Me. Because, I mean, there is a girl spy in the second James Bond film, still one of the best, From Russia with Love, and you see that she's trained as a spy, but again, she's trained more in sort of girly ways, like she's trained to, like, seduce men and stuff like that. It's less about being strong and tough. And of course, the Black Widow in comics, she was introduced in the late 60s as that kind of spy, but also a badass, like a evil Russian spy sent to like steal Iron Man's tech. And then, of course, she eventually she defected from the Soviet Union and became a good guy. But yeah, this is definitely at least one of the early of the tropes of like a female that just kicks as much ass as a male, but she has that cool contrast going, right? Because she looks very delicate and she looks very non-threatening and she's very attractive and beautiful, but she's actually deadly, which is all over the place now. But was a fairly new thing then, and I think still to this day, a lot of media that uses it takes some cues specifically from that portrayal. I give a lot of credit to Maiko Kaji. It seemed like just a great role for her. She has just a really intense look on her eyes. Her eyes look overly large because of the way her face is shaped. It all works really well. But she still is very pretty. But she really does sell like that she's deadly. It's a really good performance. So we said the movie is fairly straightforward, roaring rampage of revenge type movie, heroic bloodshed with over-the-top violence, but still every actor is actually pretty much taking it seriously. They're not like overacting like it's a B movie. And I think that goes a long way to its quality as well.
Oh yeah, it's very. I wouldn't call it a B movie at all. It's beautifully shot.
Yeah, as we said, it shares a lot in common with like B movies and exploitation movies of the time, but it's beautifully shot. It has a lot of artistry and poetry woven into it that looks really good and doesn't really come across as pretentious. I think it comes across as pretty cool. I like the stuff about revenge and demons, the Ashura, a demon in human form that exists only for revenge. Lots of stuff about blood, and of course the movie gives us lots of visuals about blood in that sort of cool 70s aesthetic from the time that you would also see in some of the giallo Italian films of the era. Some very beautiful bloodshed in this movie, and it's full of a lot of tragic stuff. Anyway, yeah, I'm definitely going to watch the second movie soon. But yeah, it's definitely made its mark on pop culture. Even people, as we said, that aren't necessarily aware of the movie, they've seen like its ripple effect. And we do have to give a lot of credit to Quentin Tarantino because he had a lot of love for the film. And yeah, Kill Bill is, I don't know. You could just say, oh, it's just a ripoff, but I don't know. There's a lot of other stuff put into it. Yeah, there's some stuff that's so on the nose. Like I don't think he needed to use the same song he does. And I mean, it looks good, but at the same time, I don't know. Maybe make your own song, or I don't know. I still really like Kill Bill. Kill Bill Volume 1 and 2. I put them together sort of as one movie, but if you don't, I still like Kill Bill 1. It's probably my favorite Tarantino movie.
Well, I mean, Tarantino borrowed a lot from other films to make Kill Bill.
Sure, there's Western stuff in there.
I mean, he'll be the first one to tell you that too. He's not going to come off and say, "Oh, this is all original shit."
Exactly.
It's an homage, and
and it's well done. And I mean,
right.
And it's not like he just went about it in a half-assed way. Because think about the people he got for those movies. Like he got Sonny Chiba, he got Gordon Liu. I mean, that's awesome.
You could almost argue that a lot of Western audiences may not have seen Lady Snowblood had it not been for Kill Bill.
Oh, for sure, and I could even count myself among them, possibly.
So
I mean, my obsession with Japan probably would have led me to it eventually anyway, but yeah. I probably found it sooner because of him.
I mean, maybe it wouldn't have gotten a Criterion release, or an Arrow release if not for you know.
But yeah, it's always cool that when people can like shine a light on films that people might otherwise not have known about. As we said, nowadays with streaming and home media, it's a lot easier. But back in the day, it was a lot harder to see a foreign film, and how could you have seen it? Even if you heard about it, how are you going to track it down?
I mean, I'm obviously a big Tarantino fan anyway, but seeing his films and knowing what inspired those certain films made me go back and watch a lot of these older films that I may not have seen otherwise.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Vanishing Point and stuff like that. Like I never would have watched that otherwise.
Oh yeah, that gets mentioned in Death Proof.
Yeah, my least favorite Tarantino film. Need to watch it again though. I've only seen it the one time.
It's okay for what it was. I just can't think of it as a standalone movie. Like it worked fine for that double feature that I saw it as. What was it called? Grindhouse.
Yeah, man, I wish I'd seen that in the double feature format.
Yeah, I got to, and it was cool because the middle part had all the cool fake previews.
I think that
even though one of the previews turned into a real movie, Machete.
Yeah. I think that thing only ran for like 1 week here, 1 or 2 weeks. Normally films back then, would run for a month.
So it probably didn't run too long here either. The thing was, actually, I got like a special pass to like the opening night for it from my comic book store. It was great though because there was a big crowd there. It was really lively. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, I always think they should have made the Werewolf Women of the SS. That would have been a good movie.
Oh yeah, and what was Eli Ross? Thanksgiving, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was a Thanksgiving movie. They might have just called it Thanksgiving. I don't know, but yeah, Thanksgiving slasher.
I don't think I've actually even seen those trailers, but I know I've heard people talk about them.
Oh, they're really good.
But I made the mistake of saying I'll catch it next week. When the crowd dies down a little bit. But apparently there was no crowd, and they got rid of the thing.
There have been times where I've enjoyed the crowd, and that was one of them because it was a pretty dialed-in, geeky audience like myself, right? Like we all knew what we were in for. It was late night, and I actually didn't have to go alone. Like Ryan actually went with me. This was back when he was a little more accessible.
That's cool.
So yeah, it was a good time.
Yeah, that's one time when I actually like having a crowd is films like that, and like I know you don't like them, but the Paranormal Activity movies, like. It's an experience, watching it with a lot of people.
I can understand that. Like, that would help it a bit.
Like, I saw Invisible Man opening night, and there was quite a few people in there, and a lot of younger girls for some reason, and they all did a lot of the gasping at stuff, stuff that I'm, I know a jump scare is coming.
Yeah.
A mile away these days. But, it's nice to have that.
Yeah, I want to see that. I kept thinking because, of the state we're in that it would just get shown to some streaming thing and I get to see it, but I don't know.
It's on Amazon Prime for us for $20.
Yeah, that's quite a bit.
Rental.
Because I mean, say what you want about Disney, but like Frozen 2 and Onward are right there. Like Onward was supposed to come out in theaters now, but they couldn't, so they're just like, here, Disney Plus. And I watched Onward. As Pixar movies go, it's definitely lesser tier. It's not that good, but still, I was glad to watch it, right? I mean, yes, I'm already paying for Disney Plus, but at least they're giving me access to something brand new. That's pretty cool.
I'll do the trial for Disney Plus and let my kids watch it.
Yeah, see, I was gonna get rid of it in like February, and I still have it. So what I've been watching lately is the new DuckTales, which is really good.
Oh yeah, I've seen a few of those. Yeah, I know that the actual Disney like cartoon movies, like we own most of those. So
I definitely don't. I mean. Between the fact that Disney never goes on sale and keeps throwing stuff in the vault, I don't own barely any of them. So, plus I was obsessed with some of the more the package movies from the 40s, and they're not all on there, but a few are. Make Mine Music is on there. The Three Caballeros are on there.
That's a good one.
I think I've talked about this before. Like I saw basically what makes up those movies, but I saw them out of order and cut up on Family Channel back in the early 90s. But now I'm seeing them as their full presentation, and the whole thing about the Mickey and the Beanstalk is so weird because the way I always saw Mickey and the Beanstalk, it had completely different narration.
Really?
Because in the original version of Mickey and the Beanstalk, as part of the Fun and Fancy Free package movie, the Fun and Fancy Free actually has like a framing device of live action of like these kids at a house with a guy who I guess was a really popular entertainer at the time. This guy who was a ventriloquist who had like a ventriloquist dummy, and they're the in-between stuff. And it's him and the dummy that tell the story. So they do the narration. of Mickey and the Beanstalk, and I'd never seen that before. And the jokes aren't good, but it's kind of funny because this is the 1940s, and as he's telling the story, the dummy is also making comments. It's almost like some sort of like Mystery Science 3000 deal. Obviously, it's not funny or witty like that, but it's the same kind of deal. Like he's making weird, funny comments about the story. But I never knew that until I finally got to see it on Disney Plus. Because years later, when they released it as like separate, separate things, when I saw Mickey and the Beanstalk, I even had it on tape. It had a different narration completely, and there was no live action. So that blew my mind when I found that out. I had no idea. So yeah, I'm happy to see that stuff too. And you got to give credit. They've got their library on there. You want to see Herbie Goes Bananas? That's on there. You want to see The Cat from Outer Space? That's on there.
I used to watch that kind of stuff when I was a kid.
Yeah, so did I. Because again, it all would show up in family. And a lot of those like nature ones, like The Incredible Journey's on there. The original one, 63. Again, I was obsessed with animal movies, and I love that. I love that movie.
I don't know. I rented the Cat from Outer Space. I think I rented that one.
Wow. And of course, on the cat thing, there's also one called That Darn Cat, which I liked a lot. So, I mean, give credit. There's a lot of stuff on there. They really go back. I mean, there's still a few things I wish that were there that aren't, but... And I know we've had this conversation a million times. It's like, release Song of the South, you cowards. Like, it's not going to ruin the world.
Never happen. It'll never happen.
I know.
I've got I was looking up here to see if they were going to like maybe do that with Black Widow, but no, they're shifting their schedule. I think Black Widow is going to get Thor 4's release date.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm really disappointed about how far everything is. Like, now the Doctor Strange movie comes out November 2021. That's so far off.
That's a year and a half away.
I know. It's practically 2022.
Huh. I'm actually interested in seeing the Black Widow movie for some reason.
Yeah, early on I was critical of that casting, but it's kind of grown on me. Like, I still don't think it was the best choice, but it's not like she's terrible.
No, Scarlett Johansson's a good actress. I just feel like why go for a name when you don't necessarily need a name?
Yeah, and that's really what it was, right? Like, she was really big name, really big star. So, okay, fair enough. She can be Black Widow. I was thinking, yeah, but there's actresses that physically and etc. would fit better, and we're not going to do it. But as I said, I'm more at peace with it now. Like, yeah, okay, she's definitely not the best choice, but she's not the worst either, so I can live with it.
Well, I mean, let's say there's an actress that could have done a much better job, but was not a household name. She's made 5-6 movies, however many it was already that she's appeared in. She would be a household name now anyway.
Yeah.
If she did a kick-ass job at playing that character, so it's really a dumb move. I mean, you've got enough stars in the film. I don't think having Scarlett Johansson on the title card is going to make people go see it.
Yeah, I don't really understand the rationale behind that either. I mean, you have to take risks now and again. And I mean, think about it. Think before, and this is when comic book movies were at least becoming a big thing, right? When they cast her, like, because Iron Man had done really well, right?
Right.
And they put her in Iron Man 2. That's when she first showed up. Around this time, yes, comic book movies weren't the massive phenomenon, but they were really getting there. There were a few, because Iron Man 2 came out, around the same time that, like, I think the first Thor movie came out and the first Captain America. So they were building towards something, right? So they didn't have to do that.
But, I mean, Helmsworth, nobody knew who the hell that was.
Yeah, and he fit in really well.
Nobody knew Captain America, whatever that guy's name is, Evans.
Chris Evans. Like, he'd been in stuff, but yeah, he wasn't some big
star. He'd been in stuff. Like, he was in not another teenage movie and shit. I mean,
most annoyingly, he was Johnny Storm in the crappy Fox Fantastic Four movies that we like to forget exist. But I had a point, and now I'm veering off from it. What the hell was I going to say? It was something about the casting. And
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, so think back to, like, way before comic book movies were anything. And they were going to do, like, the first real big sort of comic book movie, Superman, in 1978. What did they do? They cast an unknown. Because they went for somebody that could really embody the role. They didn't say, oh, okay, let's do Robert Redford as Superman and call it a day. They didn't take some 70s leading man and say, there, he's Superman. They went out and looked for somebody who they thought, like, physically and everything could embody the role. Nobody knew who the hell Christopher Reeves was. He was just some guy, So I always point to that and say that's the model. And he was a great Superman, and it worked.
He became, the Christopher Reeve we know because of Superman.
Yeah, He wasn't anybody before that. He was an unknown that they chose for the role instead of just taking some, again, leading man of the day and sticking him in there and saying, that's good enough. He can be Superman, So that's what I always say. Like when you're casting these other comic book roles, you don't need to go with some proven star. Just get somebody that fills the role and they'll become a star.
And this is crazy. Like you look at him in that suit. People would call that now a dad bod. A dad.
I mean, he did really do some workouts for it.
But now, like these guys,
like working out and doing weights and stuff. It's not like he just jumped into the costume. He did do workouts.
I'm just saying. I mean, I don't think that he looks bad or anything. But now people would be like shocked if they saw the leading superhero look like that. Like now they've got a like mainline HGH and.
Well, if you don't have like the abs, you're nothing, right? Because again, if you look back at like some of the '80s guys, and the '80s is when it blew up, but before it completely blew up, because you had like Arnold and Stallone who were the extremes. But I mean, you had guys like Harrison Ford and Kurt Russell. They were in good shape, but they weren't ripped, No,
I don't. I mean, Harrison Ford's probably never had abs.
Right.
I mean, neither have I. no.
I don't think for some people, even if you're in super great shape and health, it's just not a reality. Some people just don't have the genetics for it. I don't think I do, because there was a time where I was really trying to make it happen. And I mean, I can have a flat stomach.
Yeah.
That's not all I can have.
Yeah, that's true, man. I've seen some guys that they just like start doing a little workout and they get, crazy abs like quick.
Because you can see like guys that fight in the UFC that don't have it. And it's not like they don't work out and do all sorts of diet stuff and things. It's just not their body type.
And they like cut weight and, even at the weigh-ins, they don't have abs.
GSP said something similar. He said, like, it's kind of unfair because I have good genetics. He says, like, I didn't have to work that hard for it. He said, I have some nieces and nephews and they're just ordinary kids and they're shredded.
That sucks.
It's just part of like his family. He's just got really good genes for that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we'll wrap up before we blather on about too many other things. But anyway, that's Lady Snowblood from 1973. Really cool revenge movie from Japan. Very artsy, but also very over the top and violent. Really great mix. Big, and as we said many times, very influential. Stylistically for films of all sorts of natures, and a great example of a femme fatale. Definitely one of the best femme fatales still. I mean, there's a lot of great ones, but she's still right at the top of the list for me. Really awesome character and a really great performance by the actress. And the sequel's also very good, even though the sequel is not revenge-based, which does sort of somewhat change the theme of the movie, but it's still very entertaining, and I'm definitely going to watch it again in the next few days because I haven't seen it in a while. And someday I think it would totally be worth owning the Criterion set, but that's how it goes. A lot of these Criterion sets are awesome, but they're very expensive. So,
Yeah. This is one we've wanted to do on the show for quite a while now. And finally tracked down a decent copy of it. And it turns out I had seen it before. I did remember parts of it, but I'd forgotten quite a bit.
Yeah, so did I, actually. And it hadn't even been that long. It was maybe about 4 years since I'd seen it, but there were things I'd forgotten. Like, I forgot the order things happened in.
Yeah.
For some reason. I don't know.
But, yeah, great film. Glad I watched it.
Yep. And our first Japanese film in a while.
Not too long.
Because we both like a lot of those films, so... Definitely more to come in the future, and obviously some other countries too. We're creeping up on our 100th episode. We're getting there. So maybe we'll hold off on another series until after we do the 100th, and then maybe right after that we'll do a series, because we have like a series or two in mind, but we haven't really seriously committed to anything yet, and we do like to space them out so they're not all right on top of each other. So. That's something to think about. It depends. Like, hopefully things have been going well, and I guess maybe because of the global situation, and that we've able to like not have to take weeks off. We've been able to consistently do some weeks in a row, even if they're not always on the same days. So that's good. So hopefully that continues, and yeah, we'll get towards 100. And as we said, if anybody can think of anything cool or special they think would be fitting for a 100th episode, just let us know, because we haven't really decided on what that's going to be. We just think 100's pretty significant, so it should be something special. So. We're trying to work that out. So if you have any ideas or suggestions about that, we're all ears. I'd like to hear it.
Sure.
So that'll do for tonight. Lady Snowblood, thanks so much for being with us, guys.
Have a good night.
Peace out. Sayonara.